order. Would you please join me in a moment of silence? And the pledge to the flag. Thank you. City Clerk, would you please read the rules to speak?
Yes, sir. Individuals wishing to speak on public and non-public hearing agenda items must complete a sign-up card and present it to the clerk prior to the item being introduced. Those wishing to speak on quasi-judicial public hearings must complete a sign-up card and sign an oath. Sign-up and oath cards are available on the table in the council chamber. Individuals wishing to speak on non-agenda items may do so under petitions from the public present. This opportunity is offered twice in the meeting, and individuals may speak at either the first or second petitions, but not both. No sign-up card is required. Citizens shall not comment on any issues more than once during the meeting. All comments except petitions and requests must address the pending issue, and citizens will be given 3 minutes to speak on all items. Citizens wishing to speak on the consent agenda must submit a comment card identifying the items of interest. Speakers shall be given 3 minutes per item. However, citizens wishing to speak on more than 3 consent agenda items shall be limited to speaking for a total of 10 minutes, regardless of the number of items.
Thank you very much, Clerk. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of February 23rd and March 23rd?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Member Robinson?
Yes.
Member Jordan?
Yes.
Mayor Diesel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nelson?
Yes.
Member Stokel?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. City Manager.
On to agenda item 5A. This is the city's existing debt portfolio and analysis of potential bonding capacity briefing. No action is required. Periodically, the city requests our financial advisors, PFM Financial Advisors, LLC, provide an analysis of the city's bonding capacity and other recommendations for long-term funding solutions for capital infrastructure. Recent discussions about a new government complex have compelled the city staff to request an updated analysis and report. Jay Glover, how are you? Yes, sir.
Thank you for being here, sir, and we look forward to your presentation.
Am I on here?
Yes.
Okay. Mayor, council members, Jay Glover from PFM Financial Advisors, LLC. And as the city manager mentioned, we have prepared a brief presentation really as a kickoff for what might be some discussions to be had in the near future as the city contemplates capital projects it might undertake. So we'll talk a little bit about the current operating environment, a brief overview of the types of financings that might be available to the city, a brief look at the debt portfolio that's currently existing, and then just a couple of theoretical scenarios that show you how much you might fund with various financing amounts. And I think you all should have a presentation in front of you. Hi, it just popped up. Great. So again, here, the current operating environment, we just have a few bullet points, which you all are much more aware of than I am, that sort of outline the city's current operating environment. And quite interestingly, the last time we did this presentation, I think it was almost 10 years ago in 2012, and the actual operating environment seemed to be the complete opposite as it is today, which is a good thing because most of these things are positive trends for the city. Growing population, significant development, increased infrastructure needs, assessed values are growing, but, that comes with it capital needs and increased operational costs. So as you move through the process of looking at these, financing certain projects might be a vehicle that you would undertake to help accomplish that. If there was a need to finance capital projects in the future, there's generally 2 types of bonds that most local governments will look at that are outlined on this slide. The first being general obligation bonds, which I think the city last did maybe in 2005 was the last GO bond the city did. And these are secured by the full faith, credit, and taxing power of the city. So ad valorem taxes are added to each property owner's tax bill to make the payments on these GO bonds. And the one thing that's unique about a GO bond in the state of Florida is it requires voter referendum approval to actually issue GO bonds. So you have to seek the voters' approval to do so. but it also generates an additional revenue stream above and beyond that additional ad valorem tax you might levy. So they're very useful tools if there are certain critical projects that the city might need to get done in the future. The other type of bond would be a revenue bond, and those can come in a number of different forms and fashions, and they're generally secured by a specific revenue stream. So that can be on the general fund side, like a sales tax revenue or a gas tax revenue or state sharing revenue funds. And it can also be in the enterprise realm, most commonly and with the city, secured by water and sewer revenue. So if you have water and sewer type projects, you would generally issue a revenue bond that's paid back from rates and charges of your water and sewer customers. So those are the general types of bonds you would issue. And there's two mechanisms for actually issuing those bonds. The first would be publicly offered bonds, which is a kind of your standard issuance process where you go out to the capital markets and actually issue bonds to different types of investors, being retail investors, institutional investors. The other method has become much more common in the state of Florida and is actually what encompasses all of the city's existing debt portfolio is what we call direct placement bank loans. So that's when you're going right out to the bank loan market, generally through an RFP process, and directly lending to a bank. The ease of implementation is much easier with those types of financings. The cost of doing it is much less. So it's become a very popular financing vehicle for local governments to use. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we talk about the existing debt portfolio. So generally, if either one of these types of bonds were to be issued, there's a pretty standard process you would go through. Again, the referendum would be required for a GO bond, but assuming that got approved, the issuance process generally involves your financing team drafting some sort of bond resolution, which would describe the various parameters of the financing and would ultimately come before you for approval. Later on in your meeting today, we have such a financing vehicle with a lease that you'll be considering, and a bond resolution has been drafted for that. Once the resolution is approved, there'll be a number of other financing documents that you would actually prepare with the working group, and then you would go out and access the fund. So it's a pretty standard process. As your financial advisor, we would work through that process with you all. One of the key elements of doing any type of financing would be getting credit ratings. So we would work with that process as well, where an independent agency comes out and looks at the credit quality of the city. They're going to look at your financial statements. They're going to look at the projects being funded, and they're going to provide a credit rating on the city. So we would hope to maximize that credit rating as part of any type of financing process. And if there are questions that come up, I'm happy to pause throughout the presentation if you all want to ask any questions, or I can hold those until the end. So I'll just pause for a second and see if there's any questions on anything we've discussed so far.
We have a question. Member Jordan.
Simple question. As far as going out to the public and doing a referendum, is it 50% plus one, just majority, or?
Yeah, the referendum approval is majority, so 50% plus one to get approval to move forward with a project. And as part of the referendum, you would generally outline the projects to be financed. You would also put a certain limit on the number of years that the ad valorem tax would be in place. So if you wanted to do a 20-year referendum or a 30-year referendum, all that would be laid out, along with the not to exceed par amount of bonds. So if you wanted to do not to exceed, say, $30 million worth of projects, all that would be outlined as part of the referendum and approved or not approved by the voters.
Thank you.
The next few slides are just going to talk briefly about a few general revenue streams that can be used to secure revenue bonds. Again, GO bonds are different. They're referendum approved, and it's a separate ad valorem millage on the tax bill. But revenue bonds are generally secured by existing revenues of the city. So we outline a few of those. On this page, we note your first local option fuel tax. That generates about $1 million in annual collections, and it's currently being budgeted for street maintenance projects. So there's no debt that's actually secured by this revenue stream. But to the extent there were, transportation-related improvements needed, this would be a good financing source to use for that type of project. Again, another source is utility and franchise fee taxes. This is a fairly large revenue stream, so it's about $9 million as of fiscal year 2020. And again, it's currently budgeted for operations. So one thing we'll talk about as we move through the presentation is most all of these revenue streams are currently being used to operate the city. So if you ever wanted to use them to secure debt, you have to determine within your budget whether you can afford to actually make those payments. And we'll get into how that works as we move through the presentation. The other two revenue streams that we generally look at are state revenue sharing funds. So this is your guaranteed entitlement and your growth monies, and it's about $1.8 million as of fiscal year 2020. And state law limits your ability to pledge that to debt to only 50%. So you could only pledge about 50% of that revenue stream. And again here, it's one of your common revenue streams that whenever you're putting your budget together each year is actually used to operate the city. And then the final one we look at is half-cent local government sales tax, which is about $2.7 million in FY 2020. And again here, another revenue stream, as with all the others, that is important as you work through your budgeting process and is used annually, for that budget process. Now briefly turning to the city's existing debt portfolio. So one good thing about the city's debt portfolio is you have very little debt. You've been very conservative in your issuance. You've only issued it for capital projects when needed, and you have generally a fairly, quick payoff of that debt. So you really have a lot of flexibility moving forward if there was a need to issue debt in the future. So the next two slides just talk about where we are in terms of the city's existing debt. And you can see here at the top, there's a public improvement revenue note, Series 2009, that's outstanding. It's only outstanding in the par amount of about $1.8 million, and it will be fully paid off in 2029. So your annual payments are about $120,000 through 2029. You also have a capital improvement revenue note, Series 2017. This project, if my memory is correct, was the Titusville Mall, Miracle Mall, right? So while the city issued the debt, there's actually an interlocal agreement in place with the North Brevard Economic Development District. So they're sending you tax increment revenues via that interlocal agreement to make those debt service payments. So while the city ultimately secures the debt, another source of revenue is actually being used to pay that debt outside of the city's budget, which is obviously a good thing. And this debt, again here, will be fully paid off in 2027, and the annual payments are about $740,000 a year. The last two pieces of debt that I'll mention are your 2015 general obligation bonds, which are outstanding in the par amount of about $3.2 million and will be fully paid off in 2025. Again, the city did a GO referendum, I think in 2005, for a 20-year issuance. And we did those bonds, and this 2015 transaction actually refinanced those bonds for debt service savings. So again, you're paying $680,000 annually through 2025, and it is secured by an additional millage that was added to the tax roll via that referendum of just less than 0.6 mils, which would generate about $1.3 million annually. So you're actually only levying about half of what the millage requirement is for that GO referendum. So you're allowed to levy up to, say, 0.6 mils, and you're actually only levying about half of that to service the debt because your tax base has grown over time since that referendum was put in place. And again, that debt will go away in 2025. And again, it's sort of a common theme here that most of your debt will be going away during the next 10 years, which provides you a lot of financing flexibility. The final piece here is the Utility System Bond Series 2020, which is the most recent transaction that was completed. And it was actually a refunding of some existing water and sewer debt for significant debt service savings. There's about $14 million left on it. And again, it's paid off in 2024, and it's secured by net revenues of the water and sewer system. So once this debt goes away in 2024, there'll be no more senior lien debt on your water and sewer system. So you have some good flexibility there if potential capital projects were needed as well. Why don't I just pause for a second there before I hit the last couple of slides and see if there might be any questions related to any of that information.
I am looking. I see no lights coming on. So with that, continue on. Thank you,
Okay,
sir.
perfect. So the next slide gets a little bit in the weeds, but I did want to mention the concept of legal bonding capacity versus sort of realistic bonding capacity, so to speak. So of all the revenue streams I just mentioned that are commonly bondable by the city, at this point, none of them are actually pledged to repay debt service. So from a legal perspective, if you look at the bottom of this page, you have significant legal bonding capacity. So the legal markets and the capital markets would allow you to issue well over $100 million of debt from a legal restriction. Again, that's a legal limit. Your actual realistic bonding capacity is much less than that because you would have to fit any payments into your annual budgeting process. So we go through a process when we're looking at capital projects. First, we want to make sure we have the legal authority to issue the debt, which is usually never an issue. The bigger issue we look at is how does it fit into your annual budget? Because if you issue a 20-year transaction with, say, $1 million worth of annual payments, you need to make sure you have reoccurring revenues within your budget each year to actually make those payments. So that's really the key thing we look at anytime we look at the financing capacity of an issuer. It's not so much what your legal capacity is, it's kind of what you can afford. I liken it to, you might have a credit card that has a $50,000 limit on it. That doesn't mean you can actually afford to run up a $50,000 credit card bill every month because it results in much more payments than you could actually afford. It's the same thing with bonding capacity for the city. And then this slide here really hits on that, what I just mentioned. So the legal capacity, again, is well over $100 million, but your actual realistic capacity will be much less than that. And that would be determined as you look at capital projects and kind of figure out where in the budget those payments might fit. And the final slide, this is just a couple of theoretical financing scenarios associated with various project limits repaid over a 20-year period. So, for instance, if the city needed to borrow $10 million and wanted to repay that over 20 years, your annual payments would be about $700,000 a year. So that's really that key figure you would need to look at to see how does this fit into our budget over the next 20 years? And do we have existing revenue streams available to make those payments? Or will we have to put some expenditure cuts in place to actually help make those payments? And if you go across the line here, we provided scenarios up to $20 million over 20 years, and your annual payment on that would be about $1.4 million. So again, at any point when you might be considering a financing or a capital project that might be done, we would work with the city manager, city attorney, and your finance staff to really look at, what would the payments be on such a financing and how does that fit into the city's budget over the long term? Because we want to make sure when we go to the capital markets that there's comfort that the city has recurring revenues available to make those debt service payments annually. And that's really what gets you that highest credit rating possible, which results in the lowest interest rates possible. So again, this is kind of a brief introductory. I know a little bit of it went into the weeds, but I'm happy to address any questions you all might have. And as specific projects might come about that the commission or council is considering or your city manager is considering, part of our job is to run different financing scenarios to say, if you finance this over 10 years, what does the repayment stream look like? If you finance it over 20 years, what does it look like? Because you're going to want to make sure that any financing does not exceed the useful life of the assets being financed. So we look at different scenarios and work with the legal team to make sure all the legal requirements are met for any financing. So with that, I'll pause for a second and make sure I covered the information the city manager wished that I did, and I answer any questions you all might have.
Any questions? Anything from council? Member Jordan.
Thank you. I appreciate this last chart, actually. This is the one I was looking for, but you didn't go far enough. I really was looking for about $30 million because I'm just thinking based on the square footage and everything and the price of everything now, $30 million is more realistic than 20, because you don't want to build something halfway. I'm never going to, in our lifetime, we're not going to build anything ever again as big as what we're thinking about. So I'm thinking it's probably about $1.8 million per year, just using deductive reasoning for what you have for 10, 15, and 20. Where are you going? Get your calculator or what?
I don't do math in my head on the.
Oh, you
on
don't?
the dime.
I did in my head. Yeah, you know.
Calculator.
Don't get a calculator. Just tell me I'm right. That's all I need.
It's about $2.1 million for
that's-
30
that's-
for
yeah, that's way
for a $30 million project.
Yeah. And you know, just looking at, but I got a little confused. So let's just say $2 million annually, which is probably around 160K per month, I think. But just based on that, I was a little confused, or I didn't understand, because we have, which one is it? The utility system, you say in 2024, which is only 3 years down the road. We're putting a lot of money in to pay this debt off. And we
Yeah,
can
so
do
your
that.
annual payments are around, I think, $3 or $4 million a year on your utility system debt right now.
So basically, I mean, I'm just using simple knowledge, and I don't know this. You're saying it's possible for us to use those funding, or some of those funding. Somebody's shaking their head back there.
Well, yeah, just to be clear,
Yeah, I
you
need
know, if
clarity.
you're securing a debt with water and sewer revenues, it needs to be for water and sewer capital
Okay.
projects. So if you're talking about a city hall project or something on the general fund, you'd be securing it with general fund revenues, the sales tax revenues, the utility tax revenues, and sources like that.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we need more people in this city, so we can have more taxes without them going up. So, and I think we really need to think about it, because to me, the project that we're thinking about in the future is going to be here sooner than later for sure, and we need to have the revenue stream in order for us to do something like that. But I really appreciate what you did here, because it actually brings clarity to how much we can actually afford. Go ahead.
And one thing I should mention, which I think is helpful, we are at historically low interest rates right now. So to the extent there is a need to borrow, you know, we're really in an ideal time to do so. I know you're not ready right now, but, you know, even over the next couple of years, it's likely interest rates should remain fairly low. So that's something else we consider, obviously, anytime we're looking at a financing.
Yeah, one of the challenges we have, though, is as we wait, council, materials are going up, right? And even though the interest rate may be down, materials are still going up. So if we just want to wait it out, I don't think that's a prudent thing for us to do. We have to be smart with the people's money, but I just don't want us to just say, oh, we can't afford, and then can't afford it, right? So appreciate it. Thank you.
Anyone else? I would agree, very good report. There's, you know, like you talked, there's some in the trees. Well, starting to talk math, there's some trees for me. But that aside, I think that especially, again, the potential funding scenarios, that chart, and adding member Jordan's words of 30 million, and I'm not saying where we're going with that. You say that, if you just say that, all of a sudden someone's going to say you are, no, I'm not. But I appreciate the clarity of this, and we go from there. So with that, this is just an informational deal and nothing required from us. So thank you for being here, and thank you for the presentation. City Manager.
Thanks, Jay. Appreciate it.
Wait a minute.
On
I have one
to-
other question. I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Oh, you can't leave yet, young man.
Member Jordan.
Thank you very much. Just based on your presentation, would you suggest one financing over the other? You mentioned the bank financing, which was kind of interesting to me. So what would you suggest?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So, and that really is determined based on the characteristics of the financing. So if you wanted to finance something over a longer period of time, say 20 to 30 years, it makes the bank market a little more difficult, because banks' outside limit on how much they'll let you borrow is really a 20-year payback. Whereas the capital markets will allow you to do 30 years if you're financing longer-lived assets. So For instance, if you said, we're building a project that has a long, useful life, and we want to finance it over 30 years, you're likely going to be locked into doing a public capital markets transaction. But if you say we can afford the 20-year repayment or less, that's when the bank loan market would come into play. And what we would do as your financial advisor is we would run both scenarios based on the then existing market conditions and advise you on which one's going to get you the lowest overall cost of capital, because that can change as market conditions change. Under some market conditions, banks are more aggressive, and under some, the capital markets might be aggressive. But again, as your financial advisor, that's one of the things we do, look at all the available options and recommend to you what's going to provide the lowest all-in cost of capital.
Again, thank you. City Manager, boards and commissions.
Yep, on to item 6A, which is Board of Adjustment and Appeals. Currently, there's one vacancy for a regular member with an unexpired term to expire on July 31st, 2021. There's currently one application on file for your consideration. Ms. Van Deven, who is currently serving as an alternate member with an unexpired term to expire on July 31st, 2021. If she is appointed, she will serve in the at-large member capacity. If she is not appointed as a regular member, she would like to continue serving on her role as an alternate member.
Okay, very good. That's really all we need from staff. Council, how we want to deal with that?
Well, I'm sorry. Got to wait for
No,
you.
I appreciate that,
Okay.
and I kind of did too, because I
Yeah.
just said council. So thank you so much.
Sorry.
Vice, became a member now, so that's why I've been so screwed up tonight. Vice Mayor Nelson.
I was wondering, Ms. Van Deven is here. If she wants, I thought that was you. I didn't want to say it in case I was wrong.
Well, and I thank you for doing that. And I would agree with Vice Mayor Nelson. If you want to come up and, say a word or two, nothing big, nothing to be nervous about.
Good evening. I'm Margaret Van Deven, and I live at 459 Valerie Drive in Titusville. I currently serve proudly as an alternate member for the Board of Adjustments and Appeals, and I would like the position as a regular member.
Okay. Any questions for Van Deven?
I don't have any questions. I keep doing that.
No,
I'm
no,
sorry.
no, that's fine. I
Just
think
kick
that
me.
was appropriate. Quite honestly, you were still up.
I was just really amazed at your background.
I am a retired federal employee for the disability and adjustment for Social Security. So I was a legal decision writer, paralegal.
Yep.
I have a background in real estate, long time ago. Prior to that, I'm a retired state judicial assistant for a circuit judge.
Wow.
And I retired 2 years ago from the federal government. So my background is civil service.
I was interested in your background. I was reading it and I was like, this is really interesting.
Very diverse.
So, yeah. So thank you.
Thank you.
For applying. And
Okay.
Thank you for serving.
And if there are no more questions, you may have a seat right now. Thank you. Any cards on this? I would say we make a move on this.
Can I move to appoint Ms. Van Deven to the Board of Adjustments and Appeals?
I have a motion
Second.
and I have a second. Roll call vote, please.
Member Jordan?
Yes.
Mayor Diesel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nelson? Member Stokel?
Yes.
Member Robinson?
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Steven. It passes unanimously. We are honored. I mean, as Vice Mayor said, to read this is amazing. And for you to come in here and apply and say you want to help us out, and I know you already are, thank you so very, very much. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. City Manager,
Yes, sir, we're on to petitions and requests of the public.
petitions and requests, please. I think I will have a couple petitions and requests. Come on up.
Ask for some handouts to be to you. I'm David Mandernack at 2645 Slash Pine Court in Titusville, Hickory Hills.
Thank
But I'm
you.
representing the Astrotech Space Operations, which is in the industrial park over off of Grissom. And I'm here to ask for the advisability to change a city code or ordinance that would allow modular offices to be placed at our facility. in the industrial park. The first page that you see there is a picture of the big high bays off of Grissom where spacecraft are processed. And it's essentially just a 150-foot tall, large clean room with other ancillary rooms there. And it's just one of other high bays that you can't see from the street there. The big gray area here is how tall some of the spacecraft are. They're about 75 feet tall when they leave Astrotech, heading out to the launch complexes out on the Cape. We have plenty of office space for most of the traffic that comes in through our facility, but they all require security for their personnel and obviously the spacecraft behind a guarded fence. And the offices that we have to be co-located with the high bays so that the workers who are flying in from all over the world and certainly from the country here in the U.S. Can work efficiently in the high bay, working on the spacecraft to get it ready for launch, and then do the things that are necessary in an office environment. Second page, actually a page from a NASA document. It's their center vision plan. You see that down in the bottom right, but it's been edited by myself. In the left top section there, you see where they have identified Boeing and Blue Origin and ULA and Grumman and SpaceX and Lockheed and so on. All of those companies bring their hardware, whether it's the launch vehicle hardware or the spacecraft hardware, through our facilities. And so the reason for the request is really a result of the increased launch rates that we're experiencing here on the Space Coast, and Titusville's role is increasing in that regard. And as I say, I indicate that in times and past conversations, our facility is really Titusville's space center. So I think we all share great pride in some of the direct activity that we do in supporting the various elements of the space program. The next page is kind of an overview, bullet form of our set of facilities. We're 62 acres in the industrial park, but what I've identified highlighted in red is we can support 5 big missions simultaneously. There's no place on the planet that can handle that kind of volume of this nature, and there's no other facility on the Space Coast that can do that. The problem is we're running into a period of time where we are going to have more customers than we have offices. We can just barely handle the overlapping of several missions as far as the spacecraft processing goes, but some of the customers that are coming are bringing more people than got office. So it's somewhat of a temporary element. It's going to hit us in about early mid-July and last, I think, until early November. We've been here for about 35 years. As I say, we're going to be at 6+ missions starting in July. As I say, we can accommodate the spacecraft, but we're having difficulty finding space, and we've looked. Some folks know we've looked around, but there just isn't anything that's aligned for us. And I have about 1 more minute.
Oh, that we have to decide if we
That's
can
all
get that
right.
1 more minute. So I have a motion so moved. All in favor?
Yes.
1 minute, please.
So we've worked very closely with city planning staff and others, and have been advised to ask their assessment on whatever it would take to do a modification of the existing code to allow temporary office space in the industrial region for the purposes that we need for what we do in the industrial park. Last page is basically second to last page is showing where we would put these units on our parking lot. They would be ADA compliant. They would support all the travelers from Washington, D.C., Denver, Goddard Space Center, other contractors that accompany it, that build the spacecraft itself. It's their employees, not ours, who work on the spacecraft. They need to be co-located, as I say, next to the high bays. Power would come from the adjacent buildings, water and bathrooms would be from the adjacent buildings. They would simply use the facilities that we have on their way from the spacecraft work as well as office work. Then the final page is what a unit would look like. It's actually two. One's a office and one's a bullpen type structure.
All right, let's hold you right there. That was your extension. Ms. Busaka, can you give us any thought from what you guys see or what you're thinking, what can be done, what can't be done? I have some questions after that.
Right now, our code does not allow temporary offices in the type that Mr. Mandernack is discussing. The code allows temporary construction offices and sometimes retail, sometimes in certain circumstances, temporary offices for sales of subdivisions, real estate, that kind of thing. So what Mr. Mandernack is asking is advisability to amend the code that would allow temporary office space. Now, as we've discussed and as he said, ADA cannot be waived. That's a federal requirement. The Florida Building Code cannot be waived. So what we're talking about here is generally a zoning change that would allow this to occur for some period of time. And the more information that you provide us, the easier it is for us to develop this ordinance in order to get the structures in place by July. We have a very quick turnaround, and we would actually have to have the title for the ordinance created by Thursday. So there's not going to be a lot of time for staff to think about this. It will have to go through the normal process of 2 public hearings in front of council and the planning and zoning commission review as well. So as I said, anything that you could provide us this evening as to any things that are definitely no-goes to you or definitely we're comfortable with this would help us should you decide to give us advisability on this.
My concern isn't as much with what we do to assist them. My concern is how does that affect and what kind of precedents do we set for the next guy to come up? And this has been a big deal on the other side before when people have complained about these, mobile offices or mobile storage units over the years. So my first thought is, they're here, they're big deal, they're doing a lot of great things, or let's help them. So my first thought is, well, if we could do this case by case and not have to worry about all this, and I know that we do. So that's my part of it is, gosh, sure, let's try to help. My flip side of that is, it's not that easy. Got some chess pieces we have to move, and they're going to affect other chess pieces. They're going to, how does it affect everybody else?
The only way to do this on a case-by-case basis is conditional use permit. I have to look to the attorney, but in order to get a conditional use permit in time for this to be placed, the ordinance and the conditional use permit would have to run very closely together. Because right now, even the building permit that's been provided to the city for review is all based on the fact that the zoning will allow it, which currently it will not.
And it seems to me, as you said, the conditional use permit, my first thought was my ears went up, just like they did with the nursery lady out there on Highway 50. And as it turned out, that wasn't going to be any faster of a process than if we went the other direction. Is that correct or no?
Well, a conditional use permit is a faster than a rezoning, but in order to even consider a conditional use, we have to get the code changed. And that will take every minute between now and the first meeting in June. And as you know, you don't have a second meeting in June.
Thank you. Member Robinson.
No, my concern with it is exactly what you said, Mayor, is that if you go into the that it may bring along in the future a whole lot of.
Okay. And like I said, I guess being here 5 years has some advantages because I remember some situations where some people had some concerns with the storage units. It wasn't in this case. Obviously, this is a very unique case and one that I can certainly understand where, gosh, let's just make this happen. Well, it's not that easy. Vice Mayor Nelson.
So I don't have such a heart attack about it because it's heartburn about it, because you're in a commercial area anyway.
Behind our fence.
Yeah, behind a fence. So it's not like talking about the storage units on residential areas. So to me, that's totally different.
Agree.
So I don't have a problem with a conditional use permit, but I understand what you're saying is that we would have to run them parallel. We would have to change our ordinance to allow these storage units on a temporary basis,
It
maybe
would,
6 months, in these commercial areas.
Actually, this is a zoned planned industrial park, I'm
Okay.
sorry, planned industrial development. The land use is PIP. And this would be an industrial area. And there would be fewer areas zoned EID in the city than there are zoned commercial. So that would allow it to be limited if the council wanted it to limit to the industrial. In fact, we could choose industrial of a certain size, not the very
Yeah.
small 1 acre lots, but perhaps larger. So we could limit based on some conditions. I think the main question that is being discussed right now is whether this would be a CUP or would be a permitted accessory use. Now, staff would not recommend this as a primary use.
Yeah.
Now we've got temporary in a vacant area, but we'd recommend it as an accessory use.
So that would be a shorter process too,
Well,
sort of.
again, the attorney would have to advise whether it is prudent to basically amend the plan and the next item, amend the code, and then the next item be a conditional use permit to utilize that code without any daylight in between.
if I might
So
add
maybe
a-
we should ask Mr. Broom.
As you stated, correct, you would have to have your ordinances to get your code in place first,
Right.
because staff is then going to have to analyze that application against the code.
Could they do it simultaneously? It would sort of be if we do this, is this going to be acceptable?
Potentially, you have an applicant who's going to have fees and money invested in that, hoping an ordinance passes, because if it doesn't, then his CUP is addressed. So there's that element. There's also potentially maybe permitted with conditions. If they did a permitted use where you build the conditions into the code that you feel are appropriate, that would apply. But that is a little different from a CUP. You wouldn't be analyzing each case by case and applying conditions based on the nuances of that particular application. But I do agree, as long as that ordinance is in place, you could apply the CUP. A little risky for an applicant not knowing the ordinance is in place, and then I'd also look at staff and having to have time to evaluate CUP. You're asking for a CUP technically for a use that doesn't exist in the code yet.
Correct.
So I would suggest it would be prudent to have some.
So maybe do the permitted condition.
I was just advising there's different ways our code is handled. Permitted uses, permitted with conditions where you build the conditions into the code, and then a CUP for the types of uses where you would like to evaluate them and see what kind of impacts might be caused by that use. So you can apply conditions on a case-by-case basis.
So, let me back up. So Peggy, staff would turn around and put these uses in the code ordinance. And then Dave would come before us and say, we're asking to be allowed to do it? Am I
If it were a
correct?
conditional use permit, yes. If it were, and my suggestion would be that there has to, as an accessory use, that this has to have conditions, so whether it goes through permitted use with conditions or a conditional use permit, I think conditions have to be put on, if for no other reason than if something is temporary, we need to think about how long that has to be in place and such. The difference would be that if it were a conditional use permit, the next time someone comes forward and says, I'd like to put in a temporary office space, this council gets to choose whether or not that's appropriate in that location. If not, then it would be strictly an administrative decision based on the conditions that council has adopted in the ordinance.
So if we were to say that this is a permitted use as a accessory to office, that it is temporary and that you cannot have this for more than 6 months. That's what you're talking about.
Less than that. We're 3 months plus. The missions don't last that long. Certain missions from certain entities take longer than others. Commercial satellites are very short.
Okay, so if we said 6 months,
That would be an outward bound, yeah.
and then if we turned around and said they had to comply ADA and all the other stuff.
Yes. When do you remember we put together some conditions for the temporary schools during COVID?
Yes.
Would look to that ordinance as kind of direction in that we utilized, for instance, place it on existing pavement so they don't have to think about
Right.
stormwater. So we would model it more or less after that language. It may be a little bit different. There's some differences between schools and office space perhaps, but it would be, we think that's the direction we would go.
Yeah.
So-
Sort of plagiarize that and make a,
Right,
Change it around.
and there is one one code that I found in the city of Rockledge, which
okay.
allows offices as temporary uses, so we might have some guidance there as well.
And we could limit it to temporary structure and actually limit the size of,
Absolutely, yes, ma'am.
okay. I could live with that.
And I was going to say the same. We might have started off with that as our first batter. I think that's an excellent idea. I haven't forgotten, but you did remind us just now when we did the school issues through the COVID. I think that's a great template to look at. And I would think that if we can toss this back to you guys, obviously we're trying to make this work. And the temporariness of this and the location both sound promising to me. Remember, Jordan?
I was holding my breath as long as I could. I would have, that's for sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm actually in agreement with Vice Mayor. She makes good sense for sure, but let me make it let me make it real clear to you all. I'm in that industrial area, okay? They are actually my neighbors, and I will tell you, surrounding us is buildings like mine and buildings that have dump trucks next to it. And then you got the Astrotype building that is gated, and this is not a place for public consumption, if you will. So what we did for the school, which was on church property, is totally different than what we're doing here. And unfortunately, we don't have a code for this, but we need to prepare ourselves for more industry coming in, more things that is going to happen that we weren't prepared for, because I believe the ordinance was written for a park. They were looking for certain things to aesthetically be pleasing to the eye and all this stuff. And this is an industrial area. We're working out there. We've got hardware. And so anything that we can do, and I really appreciate Peggy has been working this for the longest, trying to discover exactly how we can do it pretty quickly. Unfortunately, Lockheed/Astrotech is coming fast and furious, and they need it really, really quick.
Our customers. We don't invent these things. It's people knock on the door and says, I got to fly a satellite on an Atlas.
Yeah, I don't think you need
SpaceX.
to make an excuse for it. It is what it is. And
I would also say that we're perhaps looking at a tipping point where this is just the beginning of some of the impacts Blue Origin, SpaceX, the commercial engine that's across the river, that's going to do good things for the city, but maybe we're one of the first examples of that increased launch rate impact Titusville.
And I was alluding to that, but you said it better than me. There's just so many things that's going to be happening, and we need to try to put some things in place. So industrial area, to me, is where we specifically should be doing some different things, if you will, but also the caveats of the building can only be there for 6 months, 6 to 9 months, or maybe even a year. I'm saying that because we don't know what we don't know, and I hate for us to say 6 months and then we find ourselves in a place that we can't accommodate. What we need to do is have a government that's going to try to help as much as possible and not put these things in place that is going to cause businesses to have to come back and ask for more permission. So I would like for it to temporary to be a year or less instead of 9 months, but also give the permit based on what the requirements are for each individual. So a year or less, but and specifically for industrial area. We don't want this type of building a neighborhood for sure. But industrial area, I'm telling you, we need to be more open to allowing a lot to happen. We've got ordinances and codes right now that says our buildings, our industrial buildings, will be a certain distance from another building. I will guarantee you that's not what's out there for sure, and we're fine. You know, the neighbors are fine with each other. And so we just need to make sure we're as flexible as we possibly.
Thank you. And I will reiterate, and then I'm going to Member Stokel, and then we're going to be done and toss it to staff because I think we've got it out there. We want to make this work. First thing I said was we want to make it work. My concern was the ramifications and what kind of precedents are we setting because we've had other concerns. I thought Vice Mayor brought up a good point that, you know, we're in an industrial park. We're not in a local area, residential area. So that helps. So, yeah, let's do what we can to make it work. Member Stokel, and then Ms. Busaka, if you have questions for us, but I think we've pretty much given you what we want to do. I thought you brought up some good historical content that you can play off of and see what Rockledge has. Member Stokel.
Yeah, thank you. What I wanted to say has kind of already been said. Industrial park, I want to make this work. My question for you is, you're saying it's temporary. Why, I guess, is it temporary, if you can expand on that? And do you foresee needing, and again, maybe next year, another temporary?
Everything that we do is temporary. The buildings are fixed, but the customer come in and use it will fly. So they don't want to be there any longer than they have to because it costs them money. Temporary offices, the customer that is requiring the office is going to pay for that, and when they're gone, the building goes because they would still have to keep paying for that. The nature of what we do is pure logistics. Mm-hmm. It's a place where satellites are designed and built and manufactured elsewhere. Really, this thing to have that happen here, they have to go into a clean, large space to be. Solar arrays have to be checked out, and all the things that are necessary. Finally, put the payload fairing on. It goes out in the dark of night, 2 in the morning. Put it on a SpaceX, Atlas, eventually Origin. In fact, the Blue Origin 27th of this month is going to bring their payload transporter factory operation park up into our facility. All the lights and traffic construction that's being done at 405 there in Grissom. So the mentioning of a tipping point is real. As that launch rate increases, Origin is Firefly is going to. They need a place where this kind of work can be done, and the only place on the coast that's of a commercial nature, pure commercial, Titusville.
Okay. So depending on your customers, you could potentially need to set up temporary offices again, maybe next year for 3 months. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure when we're building or adjusting this code that it's not going to say, okay, you did it already and now, no, like you've expired your term.
I would, so we don't build buildings unless there's enough volume that says we need to build a building, office space included. In fact, the buildings that we have high bays, rooms, offices, same. Gone beyond their time frame, put office space in the volume of people are going to show up for these several missions that are overlapping. If this happens next year, yes, we would all
Right.
lined up and ready to execute.
Yes,
rather
that's
than-
my hope.
Rather than the difficulty that we're experiencing now.
Okay, and then Ms. Busaka, a question for you. I know you mentioned we have it in the code already that we can allow for temporary for like real estate sales, construction. Would it be fair to say it could be potentially easy to just tag this kind of item with that? Or no?
I don't think so, because a construction site doesn't have stormwater where an existing site does.
Okay,
So I think that we need to think about it more along the line of the fact that it's on a site that has parking. Construction trailers are very different
okay.
operations than what he's suggesting.
Just trying to make this a little easier for you. I don't think I'm in favor of the CUP. I feel like that would just extend the process and be more money. I think if we limit it to industrial, and I think what we were saying, the certain lot sizes, I think that's limiting in and of itself. I think we should be fine.
And I would agree that you're kind of the tip of the iceberg. You're kind of the frontier. You're the pioneer of checking this out. And this is pretty a good thing for us to be prepared for, because it sounds like this could be decades of this sort of situation. They come in and they launch their satellite and they get out, and we've got to have a way to make this work. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Busaka, very much. Next up on petitions and requests. Thank you, ma'am. Two. Here you go. All right, are you prepared? You ready? Okay.
Lorley Thompson, 3550 Irwin Avenue. Hold on, you can lean them up again. So, in your packet, I just want to make sure that you guys all have a copy of the Florida Today Sunday edition, talking about the manatee deaths. I hope you read it and read it often, and I hope it gets burned into your brain like it's burned into mine. If the starvation deaths of 300 manatees in the northern Indian River isn't a wake-up call for our community, I don't know what it'll take. If we don't fix the river, millions of tourism dollars are at risk. And who wants to bring their business to a community that has a dead river? Titusville's the biggest loser in this arena, as our claim to fame as the redfish capital of the world disappears down the toilet, and this iconic marine mammal, the most sought-after target for our visitors, vanishes from our waters. To quote the article, evidence from the massive die-off suggests that this is a completely man-made famine. The sewage, detritus, and fertilizers we've been dumping into our coastal waters for decades have created blooms of bad plant life while choking to death the seagrass on which the manatees and other marine life depend. This is detritus. That's detritus. Organic matter that's mostly made up of leaves. And it's coming from here, where Brevard County citizens have invested large sums of money from the Save Our Indian River Lagoon sales tax. And that was to help Titusville build a baffle box at the end of Main Street to capture detritus before it reaches the river. Baffle boxes don't function if they're not cleaned out on a regular basis, especially when trees shed their leaves. Next. Here's the shoreline in front of Main Street. It's looked like this for more than 2 months. Look at all that stuff. Next. The white sandy beach is covered with layers of detritus, and it's obvious that the city's attempt to capture organic matter from the overflowing baffle box with that yellow plastic boom and the net has failed. Next. Here you can see a big plume of nasty brown water reaching far out into the river. This is what happens at the water's edge that causes the brown plume. Next. That tar-like mess is the result of relentless waves chewing away at the edge of the detritus.
What do you need?
I need 3 more minutes.
You used to be such a good 3-minute person.
I know, but this is important.
I didn't say it wasn't important.
Yeah.
Do we have 3?
Yes.
3? Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So that's how that mess is a result of the waves chewing away at the edge of the detritus. And what happens is leaves are ground into little pieces that are so fine that they blend into the water column, and that's what makes the darker color. That's how muck starts. Muck is mostly water combined with clay, silt, sand, and shell, along with 25% organic matter. By comparison, the natural sediment in the Indian River is less than 1% organic matter. Muck is insidious. It settles into the deepest places and it waits for the wind to blow to stir it up and smother it or spread it out and smother the seagrass. And dead seagrass makes more muck. And nothing can live in muck. Not worms, not clams, not seagrass, nothing. It's anaerobic. It has no oxygen. Anyone who was outdoors on Mother's Day probably noticed how hard the wind was blowing. It blew like crazy out of the southwest all day and for most of the night. The river was covered with whitecaps all day. So I couldn't get big pictures of the wind's aftermath printed at Staples in time for tonight's meeting. So the rest of the pictures, they're in your folders. And I apologize to the TV audience that you're just going to have to visualize what I'm describing. So, yeah. Perfect. The first picture shows the leaf pile at the end of Main Street yesterday morning. That's what it looked like yesterday morning. Lots of the leaves are missing. Where did they go? So I went across the bridge since the wind had been blowing out of the southwest and went over to the Gator Creek Dike. And the next picture is what I found. And now that beach didn't look like that when I was there on Saturday. We had a crab spawn. We were there. The beach looked like it did on January 2nd. In your next picture, it was a beautiful white sandy shelly beach. The next picture is a close-up of what was collecting in that little cove where stuff piles up at the southern end of the beach. There's leaves and trash, and the water is discolored from tiny bits of ground-up organic solids suspended in the water column. Among the fresh mangrove leaves are older brown oak leaves. And since oak leaves don't grow along the river's eastern shoreline anywhere near here, those leaves had to have come from the west side of the river. The area under the leaves, that's where I really want you to focus. It looks just like the water's edge at the end of Main Street, with the same ground-up detritus and discolored water. That condition doesn't happen overnight. It takes time for the waves to macerate and grind up the leaves. That detritus came from across the river. I believe it came from the Main Street shoreline. So, guys, we're up here all alone at what should be the most pristine part of the river. Unlike the cities in the crowded middle and southern portions of the county, we can't point our fingers at other communities and try to pass the blame for what's happened in the river. There's no one else up here to point at. So can't we at least do a better job of emptying the baffle boxes and cleaning up our mess before it spreads all over the river?
And thank you. I would say, and I've met with you several times and Kay several times. I've met with a lot of people. City manager's been there. City manager, remind me, because sometimes if you hear this on TV and no one's saying any of the stuff we're doing at all, how many baffle boxes do we have now? Yeah, I'd actually like to have a little bit of that report here. And then I want to hear about the maintaining of the baffle boxes. How many baffle boxes do we have?
We have 9 servicing the Indian River and 2 on the St. John's.
And not to bring anybody else into this, but if I'm not mistaken, and you might have been on that last meeting, maybe it was Kay, but I understand that the south part, Melbourne, Palm Bay have 3?
They have 3 more recent ones. Melbourne's pretty aggressive. They have quite a few more going in recently.
Okay, and
we can get a breakdown.
I'm not that expert, but at that meeting, one of my environmental people said that, I think it was Palm Bay had 3. You know, Palm Bay, a town of 90,000 or so, and we've got triple what they've got. Now, the problem seems to be perhaps that we're not getting the baffle box clean in your estimation. I mean,
That would be my estimation. Those leaves came from somewhere, and there's not enough trees in downtown Titusville to make that pile of leaves. It came through the stormwater system and into the baffle box, and if the baffle box is full, then the leaves are just gonna go out the other end with the water.
how often do we get to clean those?
We clean most of our baffle boxes monthly, if not bi-weekly. St. John's is cleaned twice a month. Rainy season, they'll be cleaned after every rain. They're actually cleaned more aggressively than the manufacturers recommend. They're pumped out every rainstorm. They're deep cleaned about every 3 months, where you actually take the grates out and go all the way to the bottom of the structure. So the baffle boxes are clean, but we don't have every outfall covered either. We only cover the major outfalls. Some of in the picture you saw the yellow boom we put in, that's to catch floating debris that overtops the baffles, which is more your plastic cups and things. We put those in at 3 as a test pilot, as an additional ask. We had some citizens asking us to put an additional layer in, so we did that at St. John's Main Street. And actually we put it on the outfall of South Street, which is actually 3 baffle boxes upstream from it.
Okay. And kind of on a different topic, what are those floating things we put, stormwater thing we're supposed to, what are they called? BMATs.
BMATs, yeah, and I was gonna conclude by thanking you for the BMATs at Marina Park and Sandpoint Park Ponds, and thank you for getting the mechanical plant harvesting boat. That's fantastic. I guess that indicates we're gonna not use herbicides.
That's actually coming up in a
Can I
vote,
drive
so
it?
supports
Can I
that.
drive it? I know how to drive a boat.
I know, I've heard, with alligators all around. And we have some more BMATs coming right now.
Yeah, Sandpoint, as Lily mentioned, Marina Park schedule, Dre's just went in. Sandpoint will go to priority. They're actually going to push off some of their installs to let us have the plants for it. They'll be our most intense install. They'll be twice what we normally use. They'll be bigger than Senior Center total. They'll be in both ponds. Matter of fact, I think it's being amended, his contract, but he'll be ready to go very soon on that.
And again, I learned an awful lot. I've learned an awful lot, what I have learned from a lot of your talks and a lot of the people you've sponsored to speak, and K2 and Mike, Jack. But it seems one of the things we deal with up here that some places don't deal with is our water doesn't move like other places. And I don't necessarily understand all that, but some of it we could do something about and some of it we can't. Am I close?
Yes, it doesn't move.
And that's really, and that's kind of like a stagnant pond sometimes is going to have more problems than a flowing river or stream.
That is true.
So that's a problem that we have to,
That was the
endure.
hand we were dealt.
that's the hand we were dealt. Sometimes I don't think people see that because all they see, rightfully so, with your passion. I obviously, I can't say enough great things about you, and I love hearing from you. But sometimes I like the people to hear that we have some other issues that we're trying. I mean, we've got the BMATs going, and we've got more, what's the thing, the catchy thing? Anyway, the thing I just talked about, we've got a lot of, yes, we've got that going in. And with that, before I say some more words I can't think of, Ms. Stokel, Member Stokel.
Yep, I'm actually going to tour about the baffle boxes on Friday because I want to learn more about this. Kevin, do you know, because I was out there and that's kind of why I even asked about this last meeting. Why do we have all those leaves and everything at Main Street? That's kind of where it's a lot.
The riverfront shores that are not armored completely show it more. So if you go north of there, it's seawalls and rocks. Go over by Max Brewer's rocks. Sandpoint's armored. So that section, we did a living shoreline years ago, but we didn't hard armor it. So it's going to show material in the material's going to deposit on it, whereas a seawall won't. Could some of the leaves come out of the baffle boxes? Sure. In a heavy rain, the baffles are made. They have to bypass because they are also could cause flooding if you stop all the water. So once you get into super heavy storms, they're made to bypass their baffles. So whatever can flow in the system from upstream is going to come out. they tried to catch the first flush, was usually what carries your leaves. But they're not at a perfect machine, so they won't catch everything. I'll show you on Friday. They're graded, but they're not going to catch very small material if it's been upstream for a long time or submerged for a long time. It'll pass through. It has a lot of additional treatment. We use second generation, which is a better baffle box than the first ones. But we do see this at other places. We've had citizens call that we've had this type of deposit happen where it's more of an inland, where the land mass is further west than east. It comes in and it deposits on the shoreline. We have some citizens in their backyards that happens to. If they're the low-lying property or they don't have a seawall, they don't have any armoring.
Right.
So I can't, it's coming out of the water, whether it comes out of a storm drain or it comes out of nature. The storm drains are feeding, like Lori said, the basin it feeds is basically 4 or 5 east is going to the Indian River. So there are very large basins coming through the city, passing through. Some cases, multiple baffle boxes to get out. Big basins like St. John's, we're going to add a second baffle box we got a grant for. Go upstream again, which would actually be his third treatment system in the outfall. So we are looking to armor more, which adds to better efficiency of the system.
Okay. What about cleaning them prior to a storm? So if all these leaves and all this debris potentially comes out of that baffle box because it is overflowing, do you think potentially cleaning it before a storm would help to eliminate how much debris ends up on that shoreline?
We do periodic cleaning, so hopefully that we're getting it before the storm. Part of the resource stretch is we have the Vactor truck that does the vacuuming for the baffle box, also the one that cleans inlets around town. So a lot of the Vactor's work is reactive as we see leaves popping up on top of grates that cause flooding in neighborhoods. It's reacting to that. So we do they are cleaned periodically, but I can't guarantee you that we don't have a 2-week gap between the cleaning of a baffle box and a large rain event hitting. If it's something coming, like let's say a hurricane, a tropical storm that we see coming, then yeah, we would certainly take care of it. The afternoon pop-up storms that we're going to get, the periodics will clean it.
What about cleaning up after? So we have all this right there on Main Street, say tomorrow, because we just had a storm tonight. Like, do we go out there with the trucks and clean it up?
We haven't, but we certainly can discuss allocating staff for that purpose. That would be one small property the city owns.
That's just where I seem to see it mostly is that Main Street.
Yeah.
Several times I'll go out there after and I'm like, wow, doesn't look like it used to. I'll just say
and
that, yeah.
Most of the city-owned properties we have riverfront do not have a shoreline. You would see it. They'd be across at Harrison Street. That shoreline's more vertical.
Okay.
See it deposited there. We haven't seen it in our seawall areas. Don't really show it. The parks are pretty well covered with concrete rubble and debris from years of armoring. So that's really the only low-lying shorelines we have. That's city maintained.
Okay. So. Well, I'm excited for our field trip on Friday.
Can I ask Mr. Cook a couple of questions?
I don't know. Go ahead.
Okay.
We'll find out.
It's a suggestion. And it's coming from a fisherman. Do you have lead weights on the bottom of that net that's hanging from the yellow boom?
Yeah, it's anchored similar to oil booms are. So it's anchored into the ground on both sides and the bottom.
Okay. Because I think what happened, because somebody texted me some pictures right before the meeting started that showed a massive pile of leaves in the water behind the boom. And then, a few days later, the leaves are all on the shore and there was no leaves, because I have pictures of the boom a couple of days later and there's 0 leaves behind the boom. So apparently your anchors broke or something, and the bottom of the net drifted up and it released the leaves. My second point is...
Or on that one, and I can check with my staff, we are cleaning these out too. These are water goats, they're proprietary items. The staff that installed it, our Vactor truck can actually reach them and suck out material.
But the leaves that are on the shore are going to create muck in the lagoon. And just because we hard armor most of the shoreline with seawalls and rocks, the leaves are still there. They're grinding up in the rocks and they're sinking down into the river and they're making muck. So if we can't see them, it's like no harm done. That's not the case. The leaves that come out of these inlets and baffle boxes, if they slam up against the seawall and get chewed up by the waves, they sink and they still make muck. So we got to stop this stuff from going into the river.
Well, as I noted, I'm pleased that we have a lot more baffle boxes in our area than South Brevard does. I'm pleased we're putting the BMATs in, and I'm going to have Vice Mayor Nelson in.
So, Kevin, I have some questions. So, how many more baffle boxes do we really need?
Well,
This is a guesstimate.
Yeah,
This
so
is not like I'm asking you raise your right hand,
yeah,
swear.
We've identified one additional we've already secured the grant for.
Okay.
Which would be a secondary baffle in the St. John's. It'll be halfway up the basin around south of the senior center, but around Park Avenue. It will give an efficiency add to the baffle boxes at the end of the run. The challenge of baffle boxes is when you go to a small basin, they're very expensive. So we're making a large investment to get 13 pounds of reduction, whereas the first ones we put in so far get thousands of pounds of reduction a year.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of the payback becomes a little harder when they're small. But I use, for example, Commons has a outfall into the river. It services one parking lot. We wouldn't make a $200,000 investment to service one parking lot. You know, although it is a parking lot, it would have a value, but may only have 10 pounds come out, which from a financial investment standpoint gives us a grant of about $800 to $1,000. So the city utility will be eating the rest of that. So we're looking for other options. The BMATs have been great. They've been one of our best investments, in street sweeping has been our, for the most part, on our DEP list of what we do for the BMAT side. That's by far probably our most cost-effective investment we've had. We run two.
Yeah.
Which is picking up these leaves that would end up in the river. We're picking them up ahead of time off the streets, assisting anything that goes into the drain at the upper end. But I can't, we're bringing on another group of consultants at this meeting to look again at the next step. We've hit all the low-hanging fruit on the baffle box side,
Okay.
and we're looking for more innovative or changes. There's a lot of things out there. The BMAT's still, talking with my staff, that still carries the water as far as the probably the best item we've got out there, because those are harvested and they're lab tested. So we know exactly what they did. We know their value, and their price actually just went down substantially because they changed the way they did them.
Yay.
So
Next question. If we took, say, a 2-month period and we came and cleaned out the baffle boxes twice as often, could we do that and sort of look at what it's actually doing? What kind of result we're getting?
yeah, what we could do is we do track it. We track when they clean them. We can look closer at what we're taking out of them, because the trucks that take out water, the water we move out and we deposit into upstream drainage. But the solids we weigh. We can weigh that. So now when we collect them, we're not going to weigh each box, because that gets to where our truck has to stop.
Yeah.
Now, I will say that the manufacturers have said they've done that exact study for other areas. Baffles have been around for a long time. They've done that in the spring areas where they've actually taken a baffle box, put it in a dumpster, and weighed exactly what that one baffle box produces at any given time. So we can look back at our metrics and see if we need to pinpoint what comes out of them.
Yeah.
The problem with cleaning them too much is it's going to tie up a vehicle. They're going to pimp out water and nothing solid, and that's going to take them an hour or two. That means they're not going to have the time to go take care of an inlet in a neighborhood that needs to be. So that's operationally, we have to look at if we were looking at cleaning baffle boxes when we got to where we manufacturers said we're cleaning them too much. So we backed down on a couple hours, so we thought maybe they need to be cleaned more, and they were like, no, you're taking too often, you're cleaning them. Give them time. They can handle more. We can go back and look at that. It's going to really depend on the basin. Different. If it's a lot of trees upstream, a lot different from the ones that are more in the heavily developed areas that are more roadways. Zero coming through, but it won't be a leaf in the baffle box. We can take a look at that side of it.
My thought is, if it's like, if you clean it more often and you see this really works, then maybe you need extra staff. And maybe that's something to think about when we're doing the budget. If you see that one baffle box is like more choked, then maybe that's what we do to
Yeah,
get rid of some of these
and
leaves.
I can tell you, my storm manager can probably tell you off the top of his head which baffle box is worse than the others because he knows exactly where they have to go when it rains.
Yeah.
To vacuum out a certain system. So I guarantee he knows which one needs more attention than the others. So we can relook at that aspect. Just certainly, if we find we need more staff, more trucks, we'll certainly, the utility will come back
Yeah.
and ask for it. We've made a lot of investments in the stormwater utility the last few years, operationally too, not just on the capital. So certainly, if that's something, but we can look at if we're cleaning them effectively, I'll have the manager go back through and make sure, put an eye on the baffle and see that it's getting efficiently cleaned.
I would be
at the right
interested in
duration.
having you come back and sort of talk to us about it. I don't know about everybody else.
And
I'm
obviously I
looking
would.
at
Yeah. All right. Well, first of all, Laura Lee, thank you again, and I appreciate it. And Kevin, thank you. I think sometimes it's nice to have the staff come out and I'd be glad to say a few things that I don't think people understand how much we're doing. And, is it perfect? We have a long way to go. Sure we do. Sure we do. I'm still on petitions and requests. Well,
Stan Johnson, 860 Poinsett Avenue. This is a mess that Mrs. Thompson's talking about. It's a big mess, and it seems like really we should just go in there and clean it up. I can't believe what we did. We just allocated an expenditure of $10 million using these funds that we collected by tax. $10 million to upgrade our recycled water, to improve it more, and so that when we put it on irrigated places, what we're going to do is add more fertilizer, more nitrogen, phosphorus. $10 million, and that's just to upgrade our facility. That money could be used to clean up what Mrs. Thompson is talking about. We need to go ahead and do that. In other words, nobody said that we talked about it. I mean, Sarah and Jolene talked about clean up the mess we got right now, and also did Mr. Cook. Let's do it. In fact, I think we can even have volunteers. It's a bad situation. I'd like you to look at it. I mean, you saw some pictures of it, but it's bad. It's really bad. I mean, why in the world we go out there and pay for taking the muck out and yet we're putting it back in there. So, all right. So this is a big deal. Another big deal I'm looking at is what happened in the last few months here. And I've shown you this picture a number of times. This picture, it's sewage going into the river. In other words, when it goes into this culvert here on US 1, it goes right to the river. It goes to Spaceview Park, manhole number 9, that's in any River Avenue. It was tested many times. The lab tested, says it's positive. So we are polluting the river when on February the 9th, the City Council authorized an additional expenditure of $120,000. And so while we were pumping water into these tank trucks, this 3.3, all these millions of gallons of water, and going ahead and treating it, at the same time, we were dumping water into this right here. We were dumping it in the river simultaneously. The city, and so we have a problem right now with credibility and truthfulness, because the Florida Today, the Hometown News, and the City of Titusville won't report the truth, as witnessed by many people, city staff, police officers, and photos and so forth. So we have, when we talk about celebration of freedom of the press, is by golly, we can report the truth, what's happening in Afghanistan, but we can't report the truth here in Titusville because the journalists will get fired. And I'm talking about when I offer somebody $100, I'd like to go over this with all of you guys in the council member, journalists and so forth. Well, they won't tell the truth because they'll get fired. But you can tell the truth. I'd like you to tell the truth.
all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. City Manager, the consent agenda, please, A through L, I believe.
Are you done with the consent?
All right.
Petitions, requests are done?
Okay.
Okay.
Well, let me make sure. I didn't see anybody else stepping up. Nobody else petitions or requests. That's
Okay.
correct.
On to consent. Members, are there any items that you need staff clarification on? Are there members, do you want to pull any items?
No.
Clerk, are there cards on any
No
items?
lessons.
We have 6 cards from one individual.
6 cards from one individual, okay? So, Mayor and Council, with your permission, I'd like to read the titles for the record.
Yes.
Consent agenda item 8A, approve change order 1 for the annual resurfacing contract to Massey Construction. Consent agenda item 8B, approve the purchase of the aquatic plant harvesting boat. Consent agenda item 8C, approve the award for the purchase of a replacement light pole in the Commons parking lot. Consent agenda item 8D, approve the Community Redevelopment Agency budget amendment. Consent agenda item 8E, approve the distribution of the FY21 countywide JAG grant for prisoner transport. Consent agenda item 8F, approve the collective bargaining agreement between the International Association of Firefighters Local 2445 and the City of Titusville, Florida, from 1 October 2019 to September 30th, 2022. Consent agenda item 8G, approve the contract award to Centra Public Risk of Daytona Beach, Florida for property and casualty insurance brokerage. Consent agenda item 8H, approve the change order to work order number 3, the annual stormwater piping installation. Consent agenda item 8I, approve amendment 2 to the contract to install and maintain floating wetlands islands to BMAPS LLC. Consent agenda item 8J, approve the budget amendment to transfer $318,600 of FY 2020 carry forward funds to the existing CRA capital projects as recommended by the CRA. Consent agenda item 8K, approve the stormwater continuing consultant to A&E Services final rankings. And consent agenda item 8L, approve the award of the contract for the final design of the downtown Riverwalk Way project.
Thank you, sir. I don't think we have staff with any comment or presentation on those. Council, we have no questions at this time. Call the cards, please.
We have one individual, it's Stan Johnston.
Generally, nobody speaks on this, but you. Oh, yeah. I'm here.
Okay, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Stan Johnson here. I've got several items in consent agenda. There's 6 of them here. For example, 8A, I'm saying let's approve that one. 8B.
Oh, slow down.
8B. No, you got to speed up.
8B. I'm going. 8B.
Neither. Come on, get with it. 8D is I want to approve that. On 8I, it's neither or neither, whichever you want to apply. 8K is neither or neither. And number 8L is I'm opposed to that. So I'd like to go into this somewhat, but please remember that I sent to you on April the 27th an email titled, I can't read the title because it takes more than 3 minutes to read it. It's written comments for the council meetings of this May the 11th, the CRA and the council meeting of today. And so I want to make sure that that's going to be in the, that you receive it and take it. But we don't have the people here. All right, so what's going on is that in particular on 8K has to do with stormwater continuing A&E services, and it mentions geosyntec. And I think we all know what geosyntec is, because I've had this mentioned numerous times that for the last over 2 years that geosyntec prepared a report on me that the city paid $70,000 for. I mean, my understanding is, and I've seen, looking at videos and so forth, that Mr. Larice, so forth, has repeatedly, and Jolene Nelson repeatedly noted and ex-Mayor Johnson, that Geosyntec is the one who did this $70,000 report. And of course, I've asked $1,000, anybody to give me a copy of the report, and Mayor Johnson talks to Richard Broom and says, by golly, Mr. Broom, you've already provided him eight or 10 copies of it, and yet I don't have a copy of it. I've even offered them people $1,000. It sounds like it's some kind of confidential secret report. However, my understanding, when I talk to people who have talked to a city manager, they say the city manager now is saying privately, he says, the report doesn't exist. But publicly, it's been for over 2 years now that the report exists. It says that I'm a worthless, incompetent engineer. So I'm confused. So I'm reading on this particular agenda packet item, Article 8. And the Article 8 has to do with a number of things for this contract that we're entering into. It has to do with public records. It has to do with exempt and confidential records. And it has to do with civil rights. And it has to do with a conflict of interest. So I don't know what's happening, but Geosyntec, I'm just wondering how this fits with the city of Titusville as far as confidentiality with civil rights and so forth like that. For example, when I go to Geosyntec, and I might be asking for to work with them, doing a job and so forth in my profession, and by golly, they move me outside the door. They say, we don't want you in here. This is the same company that the city of Titusville says that there's a report, but I can't get the report from the city of Titusville. Again, I've offered $1,000 for anyone to give me a copy of this report. So whatever this confidential report is, I can't get it. Yet, the city of Titusville tonight is looking at entering into a contract with Geosyntec, the same company that the city won't give me the report about that they've done, that they claim to have done. Mayor Johnson, for example, Jolene Nelson, she's bobbing her head, yes, and so forth. And in 2019, that this report is valid, and by golly, and it says that I've done just about everything wrong. So we've got something that we're looking into in this particular item, is that it talks about exempt and confidential records in Article 8, Part Z is public records, and it talks about Chapter 119 of the Florida statutes. And so I don't know what you guys are doing, but I don't get a copy of the report. And yet it's repeatedly claimed, it's all on videos, that the report exists, and yet I don't have it. So we're having a problem here, and and as far as I can say, is when I go into a public building and I'm told to leave, I'm discriminated against. That's civil rights. That's Part M of your of Article 8 of your contract. So I'm not sure. Can you really enter into a contract with what's going on as far as when I'm talking about conflict of interest, confidentiality, public records, and so forth, with this group that's been repeatedly claimed has done a report that says that it says that I don't know what I'm doing. I'm a worthless, incompetent engineer. And it goes on and on. And I've offered council members $100 each. No, excuse me. I haven't offered to council members. I've offered the public to get a council member to speak with me about these issues. Can't do it. Nobody's going to talk about it. I'm excluding Mr. Robinson. He's the new guy on the block, right? Yeah. But so there's too much secrecy going in here. There's closed doors and so forth. And this has to do with what you're going to be voting on tonight. I think something should be done about this particular item, because of what I just said. And you've seen my poster. It says, and I've also recorded in public records what the city has said on this. Word for word transcription, recording in public records of Brevard County. So I'd like to know what y'all are going to do. We've got Geosyntec on the agenda tonight. And Geosyntec is the one who, according to repeatedly said by Mayor Johnson and affirmed by, it seems that it's affirmed by Mr. Broom, although he's actually told me, he said the report doesn't exist. And that city manager is telling people privately that it doesn't exist. And right now, what I'm saying right now is you can report me to the board, you can take me to the court, and I wish you would take me to the court. I wish you would sue me for whatever you would like to sue me for. Because I would welcome a suit from you for slander or whatever you want to do. I would like to bring it to court because you won't talk to me here. You won't talk to me in public. You won't talk to me in private about these things. You won't talk to me. It's a closed door. It's as if I knock on the door, the lights are on, but nobody comes to answer. That's the city of Titusville government. A closed door policy. And this is an example of what's going on tonight. You're not going to discuss this. You're not going to give me extra time. You're not going to answer questions. And you're not going to tell the truth. And that's why I have put in writing and also put in writing is that I'm requesting for Mr. Diesel and Mr. Larice to either tell the truth or resign. Because here I am, me and my family and my clients were continually prejudiced against. In fact is, last council meeting when I was here, I asked, why was I removed from council meeting by 3 police officers, surprised from behind on March the 12th, 2020? 18. Yes, sir. Thank you. Go ahead.
Whether I thought you were very pertinent or not, you were at least talking about Geosyntec. That was in that one. You
Okay.
can do that. Help me back.
Yes, sir.
45 seconds to stand on topic for me. Thank you.
All right. All right. I'll try to. Okay. In other words, this is about Geosyntec. In other words, Geosyntec. In other words, and the truthfulness is about what the city of Titusville. Thank you for stopping me on that because I do want to stay on point on this. Is that this is the company. This is the company that's supposed to be the one who wrote this report that the city paid $70,000 for that I can't get. So I'm reading this contract, confidentiality. I'm saying, how did you make this report confidential that I can't get it? Or does it not exist? Because city records clerk says it doesn't exist. Yet council members have been promoting and supporting this thing.
Stop.
Thank you.
Okay, you're done, but I
Yes, sir.
question. You've never seen this report,
That's correct.
but how do you know what it says?
Because Mayor Johnson has said what it says. And also it has been affirmed by Jolynn Nelson.
No.
But
you haven't
by
seen
him.
the report.
I have never seen the report. I'd like to see a copy of it.
And I don't want to give it back and forth, but it's my
Okay.
understanding that the report has been sent to you. And what just hit me during this discussion, or
Yes.
Tori,
Thank you, sir.
was that you kept saying that it says this about me. It says I'm a bad this. It says, and then you follow that with, I've never seen it.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
So you still give me your report. I'll give you $1,000.
Go. Thank you. All right. So, Member Jordan, are you up there?
I'm here to make a motion.
Yes, you are.
sir.
Member Jordan.
Thank you so much. Mr. Mayor and Council, I move that we approve consent agenda items A through L.
I need a second.
Second.
Motion and a second for consent agenda approval. I would like to call vote.
Mayor Diesel,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nelson,
Yes.
Member Stokel,
Yes.
Member Robinson,
Yes.
Member Jordan.
Yes.
Member. Not motion. Consent agenda passes unanimously. City manager, please move us to the ordinances.
We are on item 12A, which is the award and execute the FY21 master lease agreement for fiscal year 2021 vehicle purchases to Bank of America, which is the affiliate of Bank of America Public Capital Corporation, at 5-year tax-exempt fixed rate of 0.8736% with a closing date of May 14th, 2021, and approved by Resolution 17, 2021. And we have bond counsel here. Rhonda, how are you? And we will need signatures on this upon approval. So I'll need the mayor and the vice mayor's signatures.
Oh,
I don't think I've ever done that one before. Okay, tell me again, you confused me a little bit because I like it when you say we don't have any old business, we don't have any new business, we have no ordinances. What I'm saying is we dumped all the stuff we didn't have anything on. So we're on 12A.
That's correct.
Okay, go. Staff.
I just wanted to remind y'all that these purchases were approved in the FY21 budget to be financed. It's just taken us this long to get the financing done.
Okay, so basically we're approving the master lease agreement for vehicle purchases, and any comment from anybody? Nothing from the council at all? Oh, well, that's a surprise. Do we have cards?
One card from Nathan Slusher.
Nathan Slusher, 860 Allendale. I just want to request for clarification on what it is. I believe this came from last year. I just picked this up, or from
Here, do
when
me
the
this.
budget was
Talk
done.
to me, and then we'll go to her.
Absolutely. I'm understanding that this was something that was already approved for financing in the last budget. I'm just requesting what it is, how much, and
I didn't bring the exact list with me tonight, but it's predominantly vehicles, public safety vehicles, vehicles for public works, and then equipment, most of which I believe belongs to the fire department.
now, are these the same vehicles that have been approved on consent agenda from the previous 3 months?
Yes, so what happens is through the budgeting process, council appropriates the purchase of vehicles and we authorize their funding source. We have the ability to purchase the vehicles whenever, because there's some lead times that you have to have with a lot of these vehicles. It's just due to COVID and everything, our ability to go out for bid for financing was delayed a bit longer than normal.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you. Any other cards? There we go. Member Jordan.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I move that we approve financing contract for fiscal year 2021 vehicle purchases and resolution number 17-2020.
I have the motion. I need a second.
second.
I have a second from Vice Mayor Nelson. Roll call vote.
Vice Mayor Nelson. Member Stokel.
Yes.
Member Robinson.
Yes.
Member Jordan.
Yes.
Mayor Diesel.
Yes. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you guys for being here. It's a long sit in between quarters.
Right, Member Jordan, I just want to clarify, that was the Bank of America. Didn't know if I didn't hear that. Okay, we good? All right, we move to City Manager 12B.
Yes, sir. On to 12B. This is a petition to de-annex tax partial account 2104747. It's located at the corner of Parrish Road and Singleton Avenue. The applicant, Roger J. Molitor, is requesting the city of Titusville contract the municipal boundary of the city to remove the subject property from the city boundaries. Subject property is approximately 7.5 acres, is vacant except for the presence of residential structure constructed in 1950, classified as not suitable for occupancy by the property appraisal. Per section 171.052 Florida statute, only those areas which do not meet the criteria for annexation in section 171.043 may be proposed for de-annexation by the municipal governing bodies. Staff has concluded their analysis, which is attached. It's in the area meets criteria for annexation, and therefore the council should reject Mr. Molitor's petition for de-annexation. And Ms. Busaka is available to answer questions that you may have.
Ms. Busaka? Anything you want to lead us with?
I'm here to answer any questions that you have.
And they may come up. Member Jordan?
Just need some clarification. Who was it that was just reading that? You were reading it, right? And there's only one criteria for de-annexing, right? Did I say it right?
De-annexation.
De-annexation. Can you read that again? What can council do legally?
What you're going to do tonight is hear from the petitioner who is asking for de-annexation. As part of his petition, he has the burden to demonstrate that this property fails to meet the criteria for annexation under 171.043, and that the proposed de-annexation is not infeasible. When he did his petition, we have 6 months to evaluate and do a feasibility study, which includes analysis of the statute and the feasibility of the de-annexation. That report has been provided in your agenda, and I believe the clerk should have a copy for the record. What the process is Mr. Molitor, under due process, will have the opportunity to get up and state his case for de-annexation, and you will judge that by whether or not it meets the criteria for annexation under 171.043, and if it does meet that criteria for annexation, it should not be de-annexed, and also the feasibility of de-annexation if it actually survives the analysis under 171.043.
Okay. I was still trying to hear more clearly the answer to the question of what we can do legally, but I think right now what we do is listen and go from there.
Correct. Under the statute, only those areas which do not meet the criteria for annexation may be excluded.
Okay.
So if you find that this area does not meet the criteria for annexation, it could be de-annexed. If you find it meets the criteria for annexation, it should not be de-annexed.
Member Stokel?
Is it fair to say if the property was annexed that it did meet the criteria for annexation?
I cannot answer that question because I don't know when it was annexed or the criteria at the time it was annexed. What
Okay.
you're going to judge it by is the criteria of annexation under this statute and the property as it sits.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no more counsel and nothing from Ms. Busaka at this time, I'd like to have the petitioner come forward. Gives your name, address, and then as a petitioner, do we need to do the 3-minute clock on him?
The petitioner should be given a reasonable time since he has a
Well, then
burden
that
to
wouldn't, we
present his
wouldn't need
case
to do a
to
3-minute
you.
clock.
If you'd like to do the 3 minutes and ask him if he needs additional time, you could certainly do that. But I would give him at least 5-10 minutes to present his case as he does have the burden. And Mr. Molitor, at that point, if you need more time, you certainly ask for it.
All right, so I guess I get to determine what's reasonable time. I guess the point I'm making is it makes no sense to me to start a 3-minute clock if we're going to go past that for
I'd
sure.
let him present it.
So can you give me a 5-minute clock and then we'll go from there? If you get stopped at 5 minutes, just don't worry about it. Just I'll take care of it. If you talk fast, that'd be good. No. You don't look like a fast talker, so. All right, here we go. It means he's very focused. All right, thank you, sir. Name and address.
Roger Molitor. I reside at 5417 River Edge Drive here in Titusville. I'm here to ask that you help me convert this property to agricultural zoning so that I can do farming practices on it legally by raising some sweet corn and sunflowers and things like that and selling them on a street side market. So I made up a little deal trying to expedite this because it's a complex deal, and it's my reason that I believe that you can de-annex this if you so choose. The first thing I put in there was a zoning map that shows that it was AU back in 2004 in the county. And the owner before me came to you and asked for a voluntary annexation so he didn't have to comply with rules, because if you ask voluntarily to be annexed in, the city doesn't have to evaluate the same things that we're going to evaluate today. And so the answer was probably didn't qualify. In my opinion, it did not, but it didn't have to because they voluntarily asked to be annexed in. And the reason, so the next one just shows that the map that you have in your package too, showing the subject property, showing Brevard counties on the north and east, city properties on the south and west. We'll have to come back to this map probably because I think one of the contentions is whether there's 60% of this, of my boundary lines are contiguous to properties that are urban in nature. One of the problems that we had when we first started out with this property was there's not water and sewer available. There's a fire hydrant down on the southwest corner of that 15-acre parcel, which we've now divided. I got the north half, my partner got the south half. We did a fire flow test and it didn't qualify. It's below service standards, so they won't let anybody hook onto that system because it's already below standards. So water and sewer both now have to be brought in from Westwood. I provided a map. I provided a copy of that fire flow test just so you have it. Then I provided that Brevard County property appraiser's map showing it's almost 4,000 feet for me to bring in a 10-inch water line and a sewer up there, and that's infeasible. That makes it, I think, according to the standards of the city, you could say that the services are not available to me from the city. And I provided in there too an email from Ashley Smith, who's the director of water services, stating and that she put in there that the city does not have plans or a need to expand water and sewer to the area. So our problem is that Florida statute chapter 171, which I've included, this is now my analysis of it. Florida statute 171, at the title of it says, this chapter shall be known and may be cited as the Municipal Annexation or Contraction Act. The purpose of this act are to set forth procedures for adjusting the boundaries of municipalities through annexations or contractions, which I'm asking for, of corporate limits, and to set forth criteria for determining when annexations or contractions may take place, so as to skip down to number 4, ensure that areas are not annexed unless municipal services can be provided to those areas. So Florida statute 171.021 item 4 was established to ensure that areas are not annexed unless municipal services can be provided to those areas. We have an email that says it will never be provided, probably. So I say we could end it right here. You should be able to vote for my de-annexation if you so choose. But let's go on through the rest of the Florida statute 171. Florida statute 052, criteria for contraction of municipal boundaries, says that only those areas which do not meet the criteria for an annexation in Florida statute 171.043 may be proposed for exclusion by municipal governing bodies. As Attorney Broom was explaining, it's kind of a double negative here to figure out whether it passes muster. If the area proposed to be excluded does not meet the criteria of 171.043, but such exclusion would result in a portion of the municipality become non-contiguous with the rest of the municipality, such exclusion shall not be allowed. I'm saying that the area does not meet the criteria for annexation of Florida statute 171.043 is eliminated in my discussion that follows. The exclusion of this area will not result in a portion of the municipality becoming non-contiguous with the rest of the municipality. Therefore, this de-annexation request that I'm asking for should be granted. Florida statute 171.043, character of the area to be annexed. The municipal governing body may propose to annex an area.
Hold, and of course, stop the clock. How much more time do you need?
4 or 5 minutes if you can give it
Okay,
to me.
we'll go 5 more minutes and then we'll do it, no matter where we're at. And maybe you'll even beat that. Thank you.
Florida statute 171.043, character of the area to be annexed. A municipal governing body may propose to annex an area only if it meets the general standards of subsection 1 and the word and is the key requirement here, the requirements of either subsection 2 or subsection 3. Florida standards, statutes 171.043.1, the total area to be annexed must be contiguous to the municipality's boundaries at the time the annexation proceeding is begun and reasonably compact, and no part of the area shall be included within the boundary of another incorporated community. And my comments are the subject area is contiguous to the borders. This property meets the criteria for annexation and therefore is not eligible for de-annexation. However, Florida statute 171.043.1 is only the first part of determining the equation. Florida statute 171.043 requires that the area meet the general standards of subsection 1 and the key word is and, the requirements of either subsection 2 or subsection 3. So to make the final determination, we have to continue on. Florida statute 171.2, part or all of the area to be annexed must be developed for urban purposes. An area developed for urban purposes is defined as any area which meets any of the following standards. A, it has a total resident population equal to at least 2 persons per acre of land. That doesn't comply because we have 0. It's vacant and a house that is uninhabitable. Part B says it has a total residential population equal to at least 1 person for each acre of land, including the boundaries, and is subdivided into lots and tracts so that at least 60% of the total number of lots and tracts are 1 acre or less in size. That doesn't comply because this is a 7.5 acre tract and it's 1 parcel. So it is not available for annexation. So therefore it can be de-annexed. Part C says it's so developed that at least 60% of the total number of lots and tracts in the area of the annexation are used for urban purposes. Well, it's not subdivided at all. So, and it is subdivided into lots and tracts so that at least 60% of the total acreage, not counting the acreage used at the time of the annexation for residential and urban purposes, consists of lots and tracts 5 acres or less in size. That's all. Doesn't comply because that's a 7.5 acre lot, essentially. So my comment is this area is not developed, so the area does not meet the requirement of more than 60% of the lots being used for urban purposes, and the area is not subdivided into lots and tracts of 5 acres or less, so it does not authorize annexation of that property, and therefore authorizes de-annexation if you so choose. In summary, this standard does not meet the standards of Florida Statute 171.043.2, so at this point in our evaluation, this parcel is eligible for de-annexation because of none of those 3, A, B, or C, complied for annexation. However, we got to consider Part 3 as well. In addition, the area developed for urban purposes, a municipal governing body may include in the area to be annexed in any area which does not meet the requirements of subsection 2 if such area either lies between the municipal boundary and an area developed for urban purposes so that the area developed for urban purposes is either not adjacent to the municipal boundary or cannot be served by the municipal without extending services or water and sewer lines through this sparsely populated area. Or, and so I commented on Part 3A, that is written to authorize the municipality to add area to the annexation land if the municipality needs the additional land to provide services in outlying urban parcel, which the city is not going to do. 3A states that a municipality may add this area to the annexation if the area is either not adjacent to the municipal boundary or cannot be served by the municipal boundary without extending services of water or sewer lines through such partially developed area, which they're not going to put it in anyway. The smaller parcel area is adjacent to the municipal boundary and the area is not developed for urban purposes. 3A does not qualify for annexation and therefore does qualify for de-annexation. Part B says that it must be adjacent on at least, or it is adjacent on at least 60% of the external boundary to any combination of the municipal boundary and the boundary of an area or areas developed for urban purposes as defined in subsection 2. My comments are the property does not have more than 60% of its external boundary adjacent to an area or areas developed, keyword is developed, for urban purposes as defined in subsection 2, which we've gone through. 3B does not qualify this area for annexation, and therefore this area does not qualify. This area does qualify for de-annexation. So my analysis to be denied this request to de-annex, my property would have to meet all the requirements stipulated in Florida Statute 171, and specifically 171.052 and 171.043. The monetary area does not meet the annexation requirements, therefore this de-annexation request could be approved if you choose.
I think that's a lot. Well, quite honestly, a lot. We have a whole pack. I don't know if you get to see our packet, but we've got a packet with aerial photos and a lot of that stuff. And now we've got your deal here. And Ms. Busaka, I kind of like to hear. And let me start over here. How about you give us, in your own words, why you think that we should de-annex?
Well, I think you should de-annex because we just went through the whole series of things that do not comply for annexation, which this thing is a double negative and says if it complies for annexation, then I can't de-annex. But I just listed the whole list of reasons why it can be de-annexed.
Okay, it can be, but why should it be?
Why should it be? It should be, from my perspective, so that I can be zoned agricultural in the county. The city does not have agricultural zoning. There's some excuses in the city code that says you can farm it and, by meeting some criteria and things, but it's just a lot easier for me to be zoned agricultural use to
Okay, so I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So if you can get the, almost excommunicated, if you can get de-annexed, then you can apply to the county for agricultural.
That's true.
Okay. Ms. Busaka, can you tell us why we aren't for this?
I disagree with Mr. Molitor's definition, his analysis under 3 on 171.043. It states that the area, and this is 3B, it is adjacent on at least 60% of its external boundary to any combination of municipal boundary. I draw your attention to page 298 in your package. I lied. Page 299 in your package. And you can see that this property is adjacent to the city boundaries by 50% of its boundary, to the south and to the west. The rest of it says that it has to be 60% for areas developed for urban purposes. The definition of urban purpose is it has a total resident population equal to at least 2 persons for each acre included within the boundaries. Delaware Street to the immediate east of the property is developed on 0.2 acre and 0.4 acre lots. If you assume even only 1 person per house, then you will have a density of between 2.5 and 5 people per acre, which is in excess of the 2 persons per acre that's required. So if you assume that the property along Delaware Street is developed as I have described, then that is in excess of the 60%. In addition to that, the property to the north, Parish Road, there are property 3290 Parish Road is 0.95 acres. 3300 is Parish Road is 1 acre. Again, if you are assuming 1 person in each of those homes, you have met the 1 unit per acre, which is shown is in 2C, it's developed so 60% of the total lots of tracts in the area are subdivided into lots, so 60% of the acreage consists of lots of tracts of 5 acres or less. That is all of the area to the north along Parish Road and all of the area to the east along Delaware in Lechner's subdivision. In addition to that, on Singleton Avenue, which is the parcel at the corner of Singleton and Parish, that's a 0.9 acre piece of property. To the south, we also have, to the north, I'm sorry, we also have, Kirby Drive doesn't immediately abut this. So by my analysis, 100% of the boundary of this property is either bounded by a boundary of the city of Titusville or meets the definition of urban as is shown in 171.0432, which is the definition required under this section.
Thank you very much, council. Any questions for either? Member Jordan?
Yes, I'm trying to get, I guess I was thinking that the criteria was within the land itself, not on the, I guess this property is, you're talking about the perimeter of the property, right?
And there is, if you go to 2, this is pretty confusing, I think. Maybe you don't, but it does talk about a resident population internal to the property. And then in 3, it talks about the area, 60% of its external boundary to any combination of the municipal boundary, which is 50% to the west and the south, and the boundary of an area or areas developed for urban purposes. That's the areas to the north and east.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Now, how do you clarify the requirements from basically the water department saying that they're not going to supply water?
Well, it's very common for development to extend to have to extend water and sewer. In addition to that, this property is located within the boundaries of the municipal service boundary. So in order to extend water and sewer, you cannot extend it from the county without violating that municipal service boundary. And the water resources people would consider that to be a illegal connection. And finally, we do have in GU the ability to raise animals and to have a farm. In the event that Mr. Molitor wanted to have a single home, which is what one of the things that he told me he was interested in, you are able to put in a septic tank for a single home, not for a subdivision. That would require a sewer extension.
Okay, so I thought that I heard you say that you wanted to grow some vegetables.
That's right. So let's get it real straight. I am not talking about a development. She said developers bring sewer and water in. I am not. I'm a developer by trade, but not on this property. I have no intention of developing it. We can't get sewer and water economically feasibly here. So I just want to farm it. The reason I want to farm it is I'm a farm boy from Iowa. I spent 35 years of my life on a farm. I have a degree from Iowa State University in agriculture. You can take the country out of the boy, but you can take the boy out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the boy.
Are you sure?
Are
you sure?
I'm positive. I love being out there playing. I got a little garden growing right now. I just wanted to see if I could prove that I can grow things. So I'm not a developer. In this particular case, I have a 7.5 acre lot that I want to zone agricultural. And if I can, I'd like to go on and contest Ms. Busaka's evaluation of the 60% rule.
Okay. I think we kind of know where we are, but I just need to understand something. So if let's just say we agree he can de-annex, he goes over to the county and they rezone it for him. He has to request a rezoning, right, of that property?
Yes, it would require both a comprehensive plan amendment and a rezoning on his part.
Okay. As it stands right now, what stops him from growing vegetables on the property?
The property is currently not zone GU, so it would require a rezoning to GU, as well as a future land use amendment. So that would be the same as far as that goes.
So if he were doing a part of this property, it still would have to be zoned. I'm thinking about having a garden behind my house. We don't get a rezoning to do something like that, so.
You don't, yes. So
Right.
if he wanted to, but when he talks about selling vegetables that are grown on his property, that would require GU. And he could do that.
With GU, you can have animals also?
Yes, sir.
So I would think that if he even got that far, he would have to go to the neighbors here to see if they wanted something like that changed. So that could be animals or anything.
The county and the city both have very similar requirements for notification of everyone within, I think it's 500 feet, the county as well. And so those neighbors would be notified regardless of whether the rezoning occurred in the city or the county.
Okay, and if it was rezoned, he can also put a pump there for water?
Yes, sir. In fact, I am sure that he would not want to use city water to irrigate.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Member Stokel.
So what is the difference between de-annexation, you going to the county to get it rezoned agriculture versus you getting it rezoned GU with us?
If I go to agricultural in the county, it's a lot easier to comply with the Right to Farm Act that the Florida statute provides. And it seems easier to me. I mean, Ms. Busaka explained that I got to go through rezoning and land use changes and everything to make it happen on this particular property, where if we de-annex it, I can just go to the county. They're already set up to be agricultural. So why don't I just go to be agricultural? Agricultural gives me some, we're trying to squeeze a round peg into a square hole here, trying to put me into this property in the city in agricultural, or if I go agricultural, everything is clean. It's zoned agricultural. I can do agricultural things.
When you wouldn't have to go through the same process though with the county?
It'll come into the county. And they're going to
Right.
ask me what zoning I want on it, and I'm going to tell them I want AU. I don't believe there's any hearings or anything to be had.
That's what I was going to say. I think
In
it's the
order
same.
to, yeah, that's, in order to change the land, the comprehensive plan, you have to go through the same process regardless of whether you're in the city or the county.
So I'd rather do it in the county.
Why?
The agricultural zoning in the county gives me more flexibility.
In what, I
urban-
guess in what regard? I'm just trying
Okay,
to
the
see.
city is supposed to be an urban development. This is not an urban operation, it's an ag operation, raising crops. So it's a lot easier to be in the county. So I guess what I'm asking you to do is to make a decision based on the Florida statutes. Either you agree that that I'm right about the Florida statutes, or I'm not. And really the decision is yours, and I don't want to waste a lot of your time.
But I want to help you out because I'm not seeing how it is, because I see what you're saying, but then, I went through the staff report and I went through yours, and I mean, you still have access to water. I see the 50%, I see the urban, and so I'm not seeing the need for de-annexation, but at the same time, I want to help you out because I hear that sometimes too. Oh, it's easier to work with the county. Okay, well, I want it to be easy to work with the city as well. And so if there's things that maybe we can do to help that process for you, if we're not going to de-annex it, what can we potentially do to help you accomplish what you want to do with your property, essentially?
I like to be zoned agricultural. So maybe we need to set up an agricultural use zoning
Okay.
in the city of Titusville.
Okay, so that gives it, I feel like for me, at least something tangible to look at to see, okay, is this a need for our citizens, for them to be able to accomplish what they want to accomplish that doesn't potentially hurt their neighbors or whatnot? So, okay. Okay, that's kind of where I'm at right now. I don't see how it meets that criteria, but
Agricultural use gives me more freedom to choose plants, to take care of trees or take trees out. Agricultural use, when it's zoned agricultural, gives me that. I believe, unless Ms. Usaka disagrees, if I stay in the city, sure, I can farm vegetables and everything, but I still got to comply with all of the other zoning issues that you have in a metropolitan area that you don't have if I'm zoned agricultural. So that's
yeah, and that's something I'd want to look at because you do have neighbors right next to you, and I don't know how that would affect the,
this property has had cattle on it for forever before I bought it. And it had horses for the last couple of years.
okay.
And now it's mine, and of course I cleaned it all up. I hold 20-some container load, 30-yard container loads. That place was being used as a dump site,
Yeah.
and I cleaned it up. I mean, you can go ask the neighbors. They stop every day and tell me how thankful they are that I've cleaned this place up.
Vice Mayor Nelson.
So as I'm understanding it, if Peggy can squint that well, that property, correct? Zone R1
Yes?
houses,
Yes?
all the houses are
Yes? Yes?
Roger was basically talking about making an oasis right there. And that's the part that I have a problem with.
So I'm sorry, I didn't hear you say.
Oh, sorry. It's almost like making your piece of property an oasis with residential all around it.
Well, I think
That's-
the way Florida statute, if we read Florida statute 17103-3A and then 3B, and 3B seems to be the contention that we have, that the disagreement. So 3B says, is adjacent on at least 60% of its external boundary. So it's talking about 60% of my boundary, not about the number of houses that's on, it's 60, not number of houses that are across my boundary line. It's saying 60% of its external boundary to any combination of the municipal boundary and boundary of an area and areas developed for urban purposes as defined in subsection 2. When we go back to subsection 2, it talks about houses and population. So let's take the property to the west, which is zoned R1B in the city.
Right.
There is nothing out there.
Right, I'm assuming
It's
that.
absolutely vacant. So it doesn't comply with anything in subsection 2 about one person per acre. It doesn't matter. So 50% of my boundary on the west is clean.
Right.
The same on the south. There's 7.5 acres on the south. There's nothing on it. It's absolutely vacant. So so it doesn't comply. It has no matter how many houses there are or anything. The external boundary of my property is only 50% abutting property that is developed according to subsection 2 of the Florida statutes that has any, so I only have 50% of my land, of my external boundary as defined in this Florida statute. So I don't exceed the 60% threshold that they've established. I only have 50%.
I have a hard time with it because I don't think the intent of the statute is to have a parcel that's own agriculture of something that's surrounded by residents.
But I'm just going by what the verbiage is in the statute. So now we're bringing other outside influences into that. I'm just saying, I'm just going by this.
That's probably why, when I got to talking to you, I said, tell me in your own words, because you're going statute after statute, and I've got an attorney over here, and I got Ms. Busacco over here, and then you were saying, well, we need to decide who's correct in the statute. That seems to me to be a judge that takes 4 days to step back and look at it. The way I see it for me, I mean, you can read those for another 20 minutes. I do a whole lot better when you can tell me why you need to do what you need to do. But part of me says, hey, he's growing a garden. The other part of me says, like Vice Mayor says, we've got a zoning area here that's going to be very odd in an area that's not designed for that. And that's kind of how we look at things. I mean, and I depend on these guys over here, city attorney in some things, but Ms. Busacco, who is going statute for statute. And for me, I would need them to tell me what the legalities are. What I generally can do up here is say, how can we make it work? I thought Member Stokel had some good comments, and I had thought them too. Well, what can we do to make that easier? What can we do to have that? I don't know that we can make it easier in that particular setting because it's residential. And to turn residential into agricultural, and even if it's only a little part of, well, a little part with 7 acres, 7.5 acres, to make 7.5 acres agricultural in the middle of residential, that's how I look at it. I mean, I can look at statute after statute, but that's not really what I feel like I do up here. I get them to tell me the statutes, and then people like you can tell me statutes. But at this point, I would lean on our legal team to tell me what the statutes say. But my common sense says, if I live in a residential, which I do, and all of a sudden, right next to me, there's a 7.5 acre farm, I wouldn't necessarily be terribly upset with it. I don't know what it entails. I don't know what a farm would look like next to me, or what kind of varmints would come in there, or critters, as my wife would say. So with that said, anything else from council? Yes, sir. Mr. Robinson.
Peggy did it, boxed it in on all the bricks. And 4 with 3 sides, these. And also, I don't understand what is the difference if all you want to grow corn, whether you're county or city. You can still grow the same thing unless you, again, towards it. But there is a difference grow or cows or something. But you're boxed in on 3 sides. That's my thought.
There you go.
Unless you show me that you can grow something in the county that you can't legally grow it in the city. Look at it again.
Member Jordan.
Yeah, I think we need to end this. I believe that you have your perspective of what the code says. I'm reading the thing, and I got a pretty good understanding of what it says. And if you remember, I started off by asking, explain to me exactly what the council can do. We can't go against the code. I know what you want to do, and that's why I asked the question, well, can't you just go out there and grow some vegetables? But you can't do that. It has to be rezoned for sure. But you said something that kind of bothered me, and I guess it's just prejudicial on my part, when you want to go away from the city. That bothers me, because I want you to stay in the city. You want to go away from the city. And you want to go away from the city because you said it's easier to get it done over on the county side. And I really don't believe that's the case, because a process is a process, and if you go over there, you still have to go through the same process of application and listening to the neighbors around it, whether they want to do it. You may get it de-annexed, go over there, and the neighbors say, oh, no.
Since
we
you
don't want
asked
that.
me, if I don't mean red, since you asked me, I have a lot of property in Titusville. I pay a lot of real estate taxes on property in Titusville. I'm not asking to de-annex that property. I'm asking this particular piece of property in this particular case, where I believe that it was agricultural, it was probably brought into the city in non-compliance, although the code does allow for somebody to voluntarily annex in, so that wiped that out. But taking that away, it shouldn't have been brought in the city, given the Florida statute 171.
No, I understand, and forgive me if you think I was trying to allude to you just leaving the city. I'm just saying, for this particular property, what you are asking to do, based on the requirements that we have, you're asking us to go against those requirements because you're reading it differently than what we are understanding it, and we could find ourselves in a lot of trouble if we do not go by the codes that we have. So I just can't support it.
And I feel the same way. It's really more of a code thing because, kind of remember Jordan alluded to it earlier about growing vegetables in his backyard. It gets a little trickier. And so thank you very much. I appreciate that. But I'll just go ahead and conclude anyway for all those people watching on TV. I think it is concerning if we get away from the code. It's kind of like a rule book. And even though I like to think about vegetables in the backyard, 7.5 acres changes everything. And so again, I think it goes back to, I think what you kind of just said, the code is the code. And we don't see anything there from my team and what we see that would change that. So I don't know, and I was going to ask this anyway, do we need to get a motion and a vote on this, or?
Yes, sir. And actually what we're looking at is the statute, not the code when we're doing this. And the statute is what we've been talking about, Florida statutes. So the question for council tonight is whether you want to initiate proceedings for de-annexation. And if you do, then we go through the public hearing process, or whether you're going to reject the petition based on the statute. So the motion is either to initiate proceedings or to reject the petition for
Got rejected. But with that said, I'll look for a motion then, one side or the other.
So I would move that we reject the petition for de-annexation, parcel tax ID, parcel tax account 2104747.
I got a motion and for rejection, and I need a second.
It'd be appropriate to state the basis for one.
Because it does not comply with the statutory requirements.
Got to be a lawyer to make that motion.
Yeah, I was going to say, that was pretty nice. Yeah, it was really good. That's why I'm going to second it.
Nobody's going to want to make a motion anymore now. Do I have a second? Yes. I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Member Stokel?
Yes.
Member Robinson?
Yes.
Member Jordan?
Yes.
Mayor Diesel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nelson?
It passes. It passes. Let's go to, where are we at?
On to item 12C,
Farmers Market.
which is advisability for a farmer's market in the downtown. Staff is seeking advisability regarding the city working with the Greater Titusville Chamber of Commerce to hold a farmer's market in the downtown in conjunction with the American Rescue Plan funding. University of Florida Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences would also assist with providing fresh food for our citizens with Titusville address at the farmer's market.
Oh, well, that was us, yeah. Not all of us. All right, we have the reading. Do I have any comment from staff? Council, any questions or comments for staff? Any cards? I have no cards. I would take a motion.
We would move to have the city partner with the Greater Titusville Chamber of Commerce to hold a farmer's market in the downtown.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Member Robinson?
Yeah.
Member Jordan?
Yes.
Mayor Diesel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nelson? Member Stokel?
Yes.
That's a yes.
Motion passes unanimously. And we move to petitions and requests from the public. Thank you,
There he
Ms.
is.
Misaka. Thank you, guys.
There he comes.
He comes in second.
He comes in second. Okay.
He's a grand finale. All right, name and address for the record, please.
Good afternoon, good evening now. Nathan Slusher, 860 Allendale Street. I'm here tonight because 2 months ago I did a cost benefit analysis for a conversion home for one of my clients. And last week I found out it was prohibited by the city of Titusville 4 years ago. So I got the minutes and I wanted to review the meeting that night and review the code. And what is being prohibited, I don't think is what was intended that night. The minutes say that, Madam Vice Mayor, this was your motion and your topic of discussion. It's to convert shipping containers into houses. And from the minutes, it seems your concern was people who were converting them into homeless shelters instead of houses. The minutes say Seattle. I found a lot in Portland. I never found any in Seattle, but I do believe in, may I approach? Basically, they take shipping containers and they turn them into developments where they have 10 on a property and then each one has 5 areas where you can sleep in. It's like mass housing. So I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that is what you were trying to prohibit. And unfortunately, we prohibited these.
We weren't trying to prohibit, these are the tiny houses, right?
No. Tiny houses are classified under 456 square feet. Those are much bigger.
Are these shipping
Yes.
containers that have been converted?
Yes.
Okay, okay. What I was talking about at the time was I had just come back from Seattle.
Oh, okay.
And they were using, the city was actually using shipping containers for people to stay in, for the homeless. And there were areas that were set up. So they didn't look this nice, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Or
Fair
maybe
point.
I was in the wrong part of the
Fair
city,
point.
but they did not look like this.
I do know as building materials have increased for our clients over this year, we are looking for other options, and that is one option because it does work in Europe. The specific client I'm working with came from Europe, and they are using them to build homes. They come in different varieties. You know, the ones that you see are just split like that, and then they have some that are taller, where if you put a drop ceiling in, you can run central air conditioning. If you connect two side by side, you have a 640 square foot home.
So like,
They're like giant Legos.
so like here, you're talking about, this would be a shipping container,
Stop the
correct?
clock, please.
I'm sorry.
Go.
Me?
Go, go.
Oh, okay. So you're talking about shipping container here, shipping container here, and I'm not sure what this is.
It's
This
just
looks like-
orange.
like
Yes,
another
correct. Those are
shipping
multiple different
container.
containers all connected.
Okay. So your question is, would we be interested in maybe looking at something like this?
At looking to amend the code, I have looked at to see if maybe we can amend it to match the Florida Building Code, or maybe if the city of Titusville wants to have certain amenities included, such as air conditioning or ensuring proper insulation. Building codes we can adhere to ensure there is safety, which I did see was one of your concerns, and aesthetic principles.
I hesitate to say that we'd be the ones to say yes and no. I think that that would have to go through staff before it came to us, and then they would ask for advisement at that time. So you're telling me that these don't pass code?
Correct.
And where would you build these? Just clearly. I don't know
You
of
can
any
build them
neighborhood that
on,
has them like that.
you can take, trailer parks have to sit on, or trailers have to sit on a concrete pad. You can take that same pad and bolt those into the concrete if you choose. If the pad is up above flood zone, you can bolt them right in, or you can, like that one is lifted, you can put them on pillars, just like some of our block homes are here.
I think if you are looking to build something like this, I think the first step would be to go to Peggy.
That's what I said.
Prisaka.
That's staff. When I said staff, I hate to use I've used your name too many times today. But yeah, that wouldn't start with us.
She has big shoulders,
Yeah,
wide
she has
shoulders.
big shoulders. That wouldn't start
Strong
with us.
shoulders. She can handle
They would
this.
have to come back to us, or you see all these people come up and talk, and maybe, yeah, you have, because you've been here enough to see that, where they've met with staff and they met with Peggy. We don't meet on that until it gets through them.
So I think it'd be interesting to sit down and at least talk to her about it. And if you have specific plans where you're looking, you have a piece of property, you have somebody wants to put that there. Because we usually try not to do things in the abstract. But if you have some concrete plans on this is what I'd like to do, I think it'd be an interesting concept.
It would be a discussion. And I like your comparison picture too. That gives you a better idea that, no, this
Yeah.
isn't what we're doing. So that's good. But I think there's going to be some questioning on where does that fit in a zone? Is that really residential? Is that, a mobile home thing? Is that?
It's definitely not mobile.
Well, again, if you look at the neighborhoods in Titusville, wherever that went, it would be awkward. There would be, I can see if it's one of those places kind of has its own little woods and kind of 3 acres around it and maybe some snow skis. No. No, it's attractive, especially the
very
bottom one.
So I
think
tried
is
to put some
attractive.
pictures that would be more comparable to the city of
I think-
Titusville.
I think the
because
one
they're
on the bottom
smaller. A
is
lot
very
of them
attractive.
we're seeing built are with 15 to 18 containers, giant homes.
Yeah.
Because they're extremely cheap to build compared to wood or block.
It's getting
And they're
rough.
safe, very safe.
All right, at this point, we're going to go ahead and stop that discussion and say you need to take that to staff and get those back. I really like the fact that you have the 2 pictures because that really clears a lot of things up for people. But what will ultimately happen is you'll find out where staff is with this, and then it could come to us for an advisability. But at this point, we can't say, let's do that.
Good question.
Yes, you do, Member Stokel.
Thank you. You said 4 years ago this was brought up and prohibited. Can you explain what you're referencing?
Sure, it was,
Was it our tiny
Ordinance
home
number 8.
discussion
it
or?
was from February 27th, 2018. Madam Vice Mayor brought it up, and Ms. Busaka and the Planning and Zoning Commission advised you not to go forward, and you did. So
Advised us not to go forward and we
Yes.
did. On what
on
exactly?
prohibiting it.
Prohibiting what?
The exact ordinance is conversion of shipping containers to residential
Okay,
facilities.
okay, now, okay. I know
Sorry.
what you're talking about. Okay, and I think going back to what was just discussed, it's something that we would need to plan for. We have R1B zoning, we have planned development zoning. It's just where would that fit in our overall city plan? So it's not that we're, I think, adamantly against it. It was just at that time, as they were coming up, we wanted to make sure that we are planning appropriately as a city, so they weren't just popping up in random neighborhoods. So I think that it's possible. It's just going to see where that would fit into the overall vision for Titusville.
Even though and you're right, I know, but it's not a tiny home. But if I was to look at that, I'd give it more of a complimentary term of a tiny home than a storage unit. So it's bigger than a tiny home. I get that, but I think that would, it's almost a hybrid.
I would love, as a personal goal and long-term, to replace trailer parks with safe facilities where the homes are actually built with decks and awnings, and because, these things would stand hurricane first winds.
Well, I think that's something that's talk with this staff and maybe some other staffs and see where you can go with that. But council wouldn't be the first people to be able to say, okay, hey, let's do that. But anyway, appreciate the stuff you bring up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, anybody else for petitions and requests? Anything from the chamber today? No, that's tomorrow. That's tomorrow. Okay, anything with that?
I believe your next item
Okay.
is mayor and council reports.
I will simply say, and just keep it short because you have the report, but boy, I think now that the virus is on the retreat and we're doing some great things and moving forward, I feel like Springsteen with a concert tour or something. I'm out about three, 4 times a week speaking somewhere, and got one, actually a pretty big one, the Police Unity Tour. I've got a speaking part at that, and that's a really good one, but it almost concerns me. You don't want to mess that up. Ones you really, really don't want to mess up, they're the ones that concern you. And then I've got a really large one. They say 300 or 400. We'll see about that. But anyway, Young Artist Foundation Ball, the very first ever. It's kind of a fundraiser for the young artists. And yeah, so just I really think part of it's the good news that the COVID is backing up and people are congregating and coming together again. So whereas I did a lot of my talks on Zoom, or made a recording and sent it to Pinewood Elementary and to Astronaut High School for signing day or National Honor Society Day, they're not doing that as much now. I kind of got to where I like that. But anyway, now we're going to those places. But staying busy, and the other thing I would say, and you guys have been at some of these and you'll be at some more, we got a lot of ribbon cuttings going on. A lot of ribbon cuttings. That's a real positive sign. So with that, things are going great. Thank you. Yeah, anybody else wants to speak up now? I guess Member Stokel, unless that's from last time.
Yes, thank you. Yes, just for mine, first off, I like seeing your report and seeing all the cool stuff you're doing. I saw that you went to the prayer breakfast. I was able to get onto a Titusville prayer phone call on Thursday, which was really nice. It was a 30-minute phone call, and I guess they were doing them throughout. So I got to kind of pray for the government side of things. So that was really
you
cool.
were that part of the National Day of Prayer. You were the government. Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, that was really cool. In regards to the water department, I got a compliment this past week. Somebody had to go turn off their water, and they said that customer service was extremely friendly, everything. And I was like, man, thank you for the, like, we always hear the bad things, but not the good sometimes. So I wanted to say thank you to staff regarding the water department. Also compliment them on trash pickup. I think sometimes we take that for granted that they will come and pick up big items, large items, trash, debris. And I know other cities charge for that. And so I just think that they do a really good job with picking up timely, getting on the list and everything. And then, as I mentioned, Friday, I'm doing the Baffle Box tour. So I'm going around with Kevin and Sandy. So I'll keep you guys posted on what I learned from that. And then as things are opening back up with the Florida League of Cities, we are planning to do the annual conference again in August. So to go to that, I would need council approval. So I'm requesting that from you guys. That will be in August. It was canceled last year.
Okay, so we'll need a vote and a,
Yes.
okay, so I have a motion.
I have a motion.
City attorney's going to say, you have to say no. Okay. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say yes.
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 All those opposed? Passes.
Thank you.
I
And
say-
that concludes mine.
If she takes me with her, I won't oppose.
Okay, I was going to say that's open if other council members want
Ooh.
to go and be a part of that. The annual conference is really good.
We can only vote on one at a time.
So, no, we just can't be at the same workshop thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're good? Okay, Vice Mayor Nelson.
So I was contacted by hospice, and they are looking for an oak tree specifically. They're coming over Monday. Guess we're going to wander the city and try to find an oak tree for their all-day ceremony, where they come in and they do a ceremony for people who have lost. I pointed that out. I did point that out.
You don't have to go around the city. There you go.
So they sort of do like a Lights of Love kind of thing in November. And they're looking for an oak tree that sort of stands out. Hopefully it's on public property so that people who want to come and pray, reflect on their loved ones, come. So if anybody knows a really fantastic tree, please let us know. So, and the other thing I had, and didn't get a chance to ask Scott, and I may have asked you. I was contacted by a lady who said, can we put the trash can by the bus stop? I would. Did I talk to you about it? One of the ladies in the neighborhood, she and her friend walk 7 miles every day. And they walk down Highway 50, pick up trash, and that there was a lot of trash at the bus stop. There's no trash can. And she asked if possibly trash can out there.
Sure, we'll take a look at it. You
Yeah.
bet.
And I thought I'd talk to you about it, but sorry. And the other thing I really wanted to ask is I
My
understand.
name.
I go? Please?
The only thing that you gotta be the trash can to make sure that, you know, that that's gonna be an responsibility to keep them clean.
Yeah.
Because everything's gonna be in the,
Yeah. You said they take a bag of trash
Yeah,
home every day.
we put up some shelters 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And the ones that we actually installed, there are trash cans, and several of them we do have to pick up the trash daily.
Yeah. What she was saying, trash congregate bus stops,
Like a baffle box.
like the baffle box. And the other thing, I really have a question. I had understood that Kevin Cook was working, and I was hoping, I would love to see make some type of presentation.
Oh, it'll come before council. Yes, ma'am.
Do we have an idea when?
I don't.
Check his calendar. I
Yeah,
agree.
'cause
I
I'd
think it would
really
be.
like to
I
see
think
it.
it would be.
And I'm hoping that redoing the, after that, I'm done.
Done?
I'm quiet.
Member Robinson.
yes. The latest thing, Member Sarah asked me to attend the Space Coast League of Cities, and it was quite an interesting conversation, nice group of people. They are meeting again, hopefully, so that you can meet with them. I think in June, their June meeting, that there is going to be a gathering of all of the great minds. The other thing that they have some issues with what Florida is doing with home-based business. So that looking for some support, trying to get that vetoed. So you can look into that. So, and I don't know how that relates to what we did here in Titusville with home-based business. I didn't read all of that, so see the difference in that. In other words, it was a good time. I sat there on my patio and watched my little crawler go around the pool and and did the Zoom thing. It was good. I was glad to fill in for you. I've made a couple of gentlemen at the. They were recruiting a lot of new recruiters at the fire department, the police department.
Yeah.
Those were all nice. And it was good to see men in uniform and dedicating their lives to the service to the city. So that's kind of what I've been out there doing. And I
Absolutely.
ran into the mayor.
We run into
City
each other a lot.
manager along the way.
Yes, yeah, it was. It was really good to go to back-to-back, actually. I think it was a Thursday and a Friday. The police attending a Willie Taylor, former football player and wrestler of mine. Then I went to a gathering of his. Only Willie would have his celebration gathering at the boxing ring at Gibson. So I went to that night. And then, of course, the fire. And we sat next to each other, pretty much both of them. So very good. And then, of course, most of us came in. Some of us came in late. Some of us come in late anyway, I guess. But anyway, we came in from Lloyd Have Mercy ribbon cutting. Like I said, they're going. It seems like 2 or 3 a week right now. So with that said, anything else, Member Robinson? You good?
I'm done.
Member Jordan? Well, normally you wait till 9:30 so you don't talk. City Manager.
Yes, sir. No action items for council. Just as a reminder, the 4th of July celebration that we call Red, White, and Boom is scheduled for 4th of July. at 7 PM. And the venue has moved to Chain of Lakes. We're doing the planning out there. And as per council's guidance, we're not having food vendor trucks or anything like that. We're just going to
I
focus
think
on
that's a good idea this
getting
year.
fireworks off. And then your budget hearings begin in August and September. So we're rapidly in the middle of that,
One
putting
more.
that together for you.
City Attorney. Say that again, what? Oh, I thought you said you had to document your time. I got a lot,
Sure.
I got a lot of time we can
Overtime,
document.
Yeah, get some overtime.
Ms. Chamber, would you like to say anything? You do a great job. We will see you tomorrow at 11-ish. I'm normally 11:30-ish, but that's okay. All right, that's great. We're adjourned. Have a great day. Almost.